Good afternoon, members, officers, and welcome to members of the public. For those of you who have not been to this meeting before, or attended one of these meetings, I will tell you the running order. After we have had apologies for absence, declarations of members' interests, minutes of the previous meeting, and some chairman's notices, we will then move to the planning applications in the order in which they are on the paper. Deputies will come to the table at that time for each item. Each deputy will have, if it's a single deputy, it is 6 minutes. If it is a joint deputation, you will have 12 minutes between you. After that, you take no further part in the meeting unless we need to ask you a question. It may be that there is something which only you can answer, and so we will ask you a question. But otherwise, you take no part in the meeting. You observe our foibles. I have to advise you that this meeting is televised on our website, and so the back of your head, if you are making a deputation, will be visible. You will be heard, but your face will not be visible except when you're coming to and from the table. If there is anybody here who has a specific objection to appearing on our website, would they please indicate to me before they come up so that we can make arrangements. Now, in the unlikely event that there is a fire or a fire warning, because there's nothing scheduled for this afternoon, please leave the building, but don't use the lifts, because the lifts go out first. Use the stairs, and we assemble by Queen Victoria's statue. We take the Queen very seriously, and so we assemble by her statue. That is the main thing. Recording, welcome, that will do. That'll do. I'm going to do the introductions. There are a couple of members of the committee who will be arriving late, and I will ask them to introduce themselves when they do. But we will go around the table and find out who the people are, so at least you know who is making the decisions and who is advising. I'm Councillor Hugh Mason. I'm the Councillor for St Jude Ward, and I'm chairing this meeting.
Hello, I'm Joanne Miles-Smith, Democratic Services, taking the minutes today.
I'm Councillor Judith Smythe, representing St Jude Ward, and I'm Vice Chairman of this Planning Committee.
I'm Councillor Lee Hunt, good afternoon, and I'm represent Nelson Ward, that's Stamshaw, Tipner, Buckland and North End.
I'm Councillor Kay. You always forgot my name then. I represent Charles Dickens Ward, which we are sat in right now.
Councillor Frank Jonas, representing Hillsey Ward, and today acting as a standing deputy.
Councillor Terry Norton from Drayton and Farlington Ward.
Luke Stubbs, Eastern Cranes Water.
Councillor Matt Atkins, I represent Cosham Ward.
Alison Pinkney, Planning Officer.
Matthew Garrett, Planning Officer.
Alan Banting, Team Leader Planning.
Sim Manley, City Development Manager.
And Kieran Laven, Planning Solicitor.
And as you will have noticed, members of the public, if you're making your deputation, we hear you. If you put the speaker on, and this is pressing the button on the right, when the little light lights up, you are live. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Councillor Donna Jones, Councillor Susie Horton, and Councillor Pitt hopes to join us a bit later.
Thank you. Declaration of members' interests. Are there any to declare, members? Councillor Jonas.
Only that a prior arrangement has been made that I should be leaving early.
We will miss you. Members, you have in front of you the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 19th... Sorry? Declaration of Members' Interests. I've asked for that. Yeah. Okay. Minutes of previous meeting, 19th of June, you have in front of you. I will take them page by page. Strangely enough, we start on page 5. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. I assume I have...
I agree with them.
Sorry?
Apart from the result, I agree with them.
Okay.
Shall I propose them,
Right.
I can second them as well if you like.
Yes, well, I propose them from the chair, and so it doesn't need a seconder. Okay, so I accept the minutes, and I accept the fact that Councillor Hunt believes them to be a correct record. Right. Okay. We now move on to the next item, which is an update on previous applications and on the nitrate situation. Mr. Manley.
Thank you, Chair. It was resolved at this committee meeting previously that we do an update every meeting. So basically, this is an update to exactly where we are at the moment. Obviously, you appreciate there is this issue about nitrate neutrality in terms of any development, and at this moment in time, it's the authorities not in a position to issue decisions on anything that's going to generate an overnight stay, that's residential, hotels and the like, because of the problems of adding to the already pre-existing problem in the solent from nitrates and a phenomena called algae bloom or eutrophication. Obviously very important that we try and get this resolved, and we have been working very hard to come up with some interim measures to allow us to start moving forward and issuing decisions. We have been in discussions with Natural England regarding this, and they have actually confirmed that some of our approaches for very short-term interim measures, such as offsetting against existing permissions, which are deemed to be part of the existing problem, and then allowing new applications to come in where we can demonstrate there's an improvement in water efficiency, has been accepted by Natural England as an option of moving forward, and I can confirm that one of the applications that was brought in front of this committee previously, the prison site, has been struggling to come forward. We've now confirmed that we are moving forward on that one because it has a historic Act stamp permission, and by using water efficiency improvements, we've managed to get to a position where we think we're in a position to issue that decision, which is good because it does have quite a few outside the permission, but I understand there's going to be quite a few affordable units in that, so all positive there. In terms of appeals, we have been refusing, or a number of applications have been refused on nitrates issue, and we have actually started getting some responses back from the planning inspector. There's one on 32 Norman Road which was refused on the basis of no nitrate mitigation supporting the application, and that was actually dismissed on those grounds. Obviously, we can't do this on our own. We are looking to actually come up with some solutions on a sub-regional level through PUSH to come up with a strategy moving forward, and I can confirm that work's ongoing, and it's anticipated that a strategy will be in place by the 15th of October 2019, and that's something we're pushing for. As well as working on that, a paper is being prepared for the PUSH Joint Committee on the 13th of July relating to that and the steps moving forward, get an agreement on all the different measures that will encompass, so we've come up with an overall strategy allowing us to actually start issuing decisions. There's other meetings taking place, one today, regarding the mitigation problem, or the eutrophication problem. There's an Hampshire County Council Agricultural Land meeting today, and also an East Solent Coastal Partnership Regional Habitat Compensation Programme is also meeting on the 22nd of July. We have come up with some interim measures, just to give you a little bit more of an insight on what we're doing is in terms of very short and medium term. At this moment in the authority, what we're looking at is doing some water offsetting, water efficiency measures in our own housing stock, and we think that where we can improve the water efficiency of our existing stock, for each one that we improve, or for each 5 that we improve, we should actually be able to grant 1 planning permission on the back of that. But what we're doing is working through a strategy to make sure that none of the costs of any of those works will be transferred to the tenants living in and occupying those properties. So it's actually us coming forward with the strategies to actually improve water efficiency of our own stock, and in doing so actually addresses quite a few other of our burning issues with the authority in terms of climate change. So actually quite positive there. And obviously one thing that came out of the meeting, or when members were talking about it previously, was actually concerns about what the central government is doing. We have written to the Minister regarding this issue, and we are aware now that the Minister is organising a cross-government departmental meeting relating to this issue. I don't think they were particularly aware of it before. It is now very much squarely in front of them to actually be looked at. And obviously with Push is also looking to actually lobby them as well, and obviously looking into the issue of the problems that Southern Water had relating to discharge and Ofwat's investigations in relation to that. That's the update in there. I'm happy to answer any questions if I can. Some of it's moving forward, and some of it I can't talk about at the moment because obviously there's internal stuff, but quite happy to have a quick chat.
Councillor Stubbs had his hand up first, then Councillor Hunt.
You mentioned about water efficiency in the council's own housing stock. Presumably there's no way of collecting contributions from developers to pay for that, and yet not just the tenants but the council itself shouldn't find itself out of pocket for doing those works. So what discussions are there, if any, with developers about recovering any of those costs?
Obviously we're trying to bring forward lots of units. If we were to actually improve all our water, get water efficiencies across the whole of our stock, we would be looking at a total of 2,400 additional dwellings that we could bring forward. Obviously, if we were going to be offering those out to the market, any costs associated with doing those works would be picked up by the developer and be expected to pay on a per unit basis. So it's not anticipated that in relation to our own stock, obviously we'll have to bear that if we're looking to build our own units and have offset mitigation against that. But obviously if we're looking to go out to the market and use those to support private sector development coming forward, there would be a cost associated with that, so we would be charging out.
So you're confident we can do that even though we don't have any form of SVD or policy for collecting contributions?
It is a matter that needs to be, and that's one of the things I was talking about, that we're moving forward on that, and we are looking at that and steps we need to do and take as an authority to enable us to do that in the future.
Councillor Hunt.
So I'm just a bit curious to understand what water efficiency actually means, because I don't understand how the amount of nitrates going down the system, for want of a better word, is improved. But I mean, I'm great if it is, but how does that improve water efficiency and the number and the amount of nitrates going, or otherwise going into the sea or whatever?
Understood. Basically, the licence that Southern Water have to discharge effluents into, or water into the Solent, can only contain a certain amount of nitrates per volume. So basically, if they put a litre in, it will contain so much nitrates. If we reduce the water going to the pumping plant, then we actually reduce the amount of water that they can discharge. Therefore, because they have a set rate of discharge, the less water we send them, It increases the concentration at their end, and then they have to deal with it.
And it means they have less water to worry about.
There will be a reduction in the overall water coming from our properties. Yes.
Before we go on, welcome. If you could introduce yourself, and do you have any interests?
Good afternoon, Chair, and apologies for lateness. It was another council matter. No declarations of interest on Councillor Steve Pitt for Central Southsea Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Atkins. Councillor Udi.
Thank you for the report. I was a little surprised to hear you. It sounds like you've now started issuing refusals on the basis of nitrates. Was that a decision taken by officers, or am I now to understand that perhaps this is actually a question that should be directed to Councillor Pitt? Has the Cabinet taken a decision not to proceed at risk with issuing permission then and authorised the officers to start refusing these applications?
We're currently speaking to and seeking legal advice about the position of issuing decisions in relation to the issuing of a refusal. When an application comes in and it isn't supported by offsetting, then as an appropriate authority, we have to carry out an appropriate assessment. And if we can't demonstrate that actually that's not going to cause harm, then we would issue a refusal. That would happen with the bird mitigation that we have in the place at the moment. If they didn't pay the bird mitigation, it would be a refusal on that basis. So it's not a case of we've made a decision, it's just that where an application is being asked to be determined, we're determining it on the basis of not having the offsetting, because there isn't any at this moment in time. So we are moving forward applications where there is a problem with nitrate offsetting and it does generate an overnight stay. That will be a reason for refusal.
Certainly I and other members, I appreciate we're in opposition, were of the opinion that that it was not really the response. We did not agree with the legal interpretation and the position that nitrate should be a reason for refusing planning permission. And going forward, we don't want to see the development in the city brought to a complete standstill as a result of one questionably interpreted decision by Natural England, and my understanding certainly was that it was going to be a decision the Cabinet was going to take whether or not to proceed at risk or whether to start refusing applications on this basis. And so I'm surprised to hear that refusals have started to be issued on the basis of an officer decision that we're going to accept this precedent, or we're going to start refusing on the basis of nitrates. It's not a basis on which I want to start refusing applications.
Councillor Pitt.
I think we need to be really clear here, Chair, that this is not a political decision that can be made arbitrarily at the will of the Cabinet member or anyone else. We have legal advice, which is excellent, and we need to follow that advice until we receive alternative advice. Other authorities within the PUSH area, the Partnership for Urban South Hampshire, from the public's perspective, which includes the other Southern authorities, have made decisions and then reversed those decisions, have not granted and have begun granting. That is no good whatsoever for developers. We need a clear position, and we are working very hard to come to that position, but to go out making bold political statements from councillors that they don't agree with the QC's advice would be most unwise.
Well, some councils have in fact taken that decision. It is a decision that some councils in the area have taken it.
For clarification, Chair, some councils have made a decision and then changed that decision. That is not where we want to be. We need to be clear about where we are. I'm sure that the Planning Committee's legal advisor could give us a clearer steer on this if needed, and I don't want to go into naming other local authorities and getting into their business, but I can think of at least two off the top of my head that went down one route and then did a reversal and went down another, and that could put us in a really difficult position.
Kieran, can you advise us on this?
Officers are keeping a watch on what other authorities are doing and speaking to them. As Councillor Pitt has said, the Council has taken its own advice from Queen's Counsel, and I can't sit here and tell you to do otherwise than to follow that advice. If there are other angles that emerge, we will push those and go back to Queen's Counsel for a view on what we can do to possibly start issuing permissions again. But I can't sit here as a professional and sort of endorse the view that we would not follow Queen's Counsel's advice.
Can I just confirm that I was making no criticism of officers in the point that I was making?
Councillor Udy?
You mentioned about Harold Road appeal, and not Harold, that's where I live. Norman Road, the other man. Could you refresh me on what that planning permission was? Because you said it was just refused on the basis of nitrate, so would it have been upheld otherwise?
To apologise. It was an application for intensification use of a dwelling C4 to a large-scale HMO, so a sewage and issues, and it was refused by the planning inspector. Do you want me to read out the reason for review that he dismissed on? Yeah. Okay. In the absence of evidence to the contrary, and the proposed development would adversely affect the integrity of the SPAs, either alone or in combination with other development as a result of additional nitrogen and phosphorus from additional wastewater generated by the increased population. The proposal would therefore conflict with the habitat regulation and Portsmouth policy PCS 13, which amongst other things seeks to ensure that an unavoidable negative impact on biodiversity are appropriately mitigated. For similar reasons, the proposed would also conflict with para 175 of the National Planning Policy Framework.
Councillor Hunt?
Yeah, just for the sake of the people here who might be utterly confused about what we're talking about, I just wondered if you guys would confirm that we received an order in effect from government that we shouldn't pass any more planning applications or word to that effect, and that this came down from Natural England, and that the government minister in charge is Michael Gove. So we've been told to do that we should consider this, and we've taken legal advice about it subsequently to see what we can do about it.
Correct.
There has been a court case on this matter, and our attempt is to find ways in which we can go forward with developments, either mitigating the nitrate output or making them nitrate neutral, which would mean that we would have to buy land somewhere to absorb nitrates. It's a tricky problem, but I think we're getting a grip on it. But at the moment, as you have heard, we have Queen's Counsel's advice on the matter. There are other legal matters which, Kieran, you might wish to update us on. Oh, sorry, Councillor Pitt.
Just to follow up on Councillor Hunt's point, Chair, when I was at the Local Government Association conference with the leader the week before last, we had an understanding that the government, or at least the Department of Local Government, would be aware of this issue, and the leader made an attempt to communicate with James Brokenshire about this. It appeared that James Brokenshire, although a member of the Cabinet, was not aware of this issue. So it's a classic case of government not talking to itself, but we all know why they may be otherwise distracted at the moment. So he has had that conversation with him, and he has subsequently written to him. He has notified all of the major developers in the city via a letter aware of that situation. There has also been a meeting, I understand, between senior officers in planning department and a number of developers in the city to keep them updated. We are where we are. We are moving as fast as we possibly can. None of us wants to see a situation where development of any type gets stopped in Portsmouth. We need to get around it, but we need to be able to get around it and then move forward with complete confidence. But we also did pass a climate emergency motion a few months ago, and just saying to hell with you government, we're going to carry on regardless and not even try and put any mitigation in place to show that we're taking it seriously would be wholly irresponsible in my view.
Councillor Atkins, then I will ask...
Certainly. I mean, I perhaps this was not listening carefully, but I didn't. Is there any revised timescale as to how soon you think you'll be able to go back to issuing planning permissions. Because for further clarification, what we are talking about is this planning committee will not be able to issue any permission for any development which increases the size of residential occupation in Portsmouth. No new houses, no extensions which increase the size of occupation, no developments which will meet our housing targets for new residents, likely huge impact on the city's construction industry, likely huge impact on people's ability to afford housing because of a disruption to the supply of housing. Can you also please confirm that Natural England is not the responsible planning authority, but Portsmouth City Council is responsible planning authority? And just for further clarification, it is the case that some councils have taken the decision to carry on permitting housing development despite this issue, which has arisen from a European Union court case, which was not decided in this country, and we have some legal advice, I accept, that suggests it should apply to us, and Natural England agree with that. However, it is a decision that we as a council can take.
Yep. To confirm, you're correct. The council is the authority that grants planning permission. It comes to its own decision. However, the case law is clear that to depart from the views of a statutory consultee, the council must have cogent and compelling reasons for doing so. That is where we are at the moment.
Anything further you wish to add on any other matters?
Maybe what I was talking about was that Push is trying to come up with a strategy. Hopefully that will be in place by the 15th of October. Hopefully at that point we'll be able to start issuing decisions. Up until that point we are looking at our own measures, and that's why I was talking about the offsetting. So we're working very, very hard to try and come up with these things where we can put in place mitigation strategies that offer up a nitrate neutral solution. So it is a huge amount of effort going on behind the scenes to try and get this sorted and get decisions out.
Yeah, and I do thank and congratulate the officers on their hard work and good work in that regard.
Right, unusually I actually have another two updates to make to you. Firstly relates to a judicial review that the council received yesterday. That relates to 13 Windcliffe Road, which was the appeal decision in which the inspector found in favour of the council's policy relating to the living space and impact on the cumulative impact of HMOs in a particular area and density. I'm awaiting the sealed papers from the court yet, so once I have those, that confirms effectively that the court's acknowledged the papers and the case will proceed. I will do an update to officers, take instructions, and look to instruct a barrister to represent the council's interest. It's worth noting that the council is only the second defendant because it's the planning inspectorate's decision that's being judicially reviewed, so we are, I think as the applicant put it to me, was sort of CC'd in on the proceedings, and the extent to which we'll become involved will be something I'll discuss with the barrister that we later appoint. So I would anticipate updating you on that next month. Okay. Any questions on that, Councillor?
Councillor Stubbs.
Yes, I mean, what is the nature of the challenge? Is it that our policy is not sound, or is it that there were other reasons why the policy shouldn't have been applied in this situation?
On the basis that I got the papers yesterday afternoon and have been preparing for committee this morning, I wouldn't like to go into any detail on that at the moment, but as I say, I will update you next month with a bit more precision. I appreciate that might be a little frustrating, but there's only so much I can do, unfortunately.
Thank you. You've got another one, okay. And your second...
My second update that I have relates to something that Councillor Hunt asked me to do at the last committee in relation to motions to defer taking precedence over the main motion. I've done a little bit more research into this following the guidance that I had in notes before me on the day. I've referred to something called Robert's Rules of Order, which is recommended in the particular notes that I have. And the answer is effectively that a motion to defer is a form of secondary motion. It's effectively procedural, and that means that it has to be considered ahead of the main motion, which would finally dispose of the matter and make any other motions redundant. So there's a certain logic there that you would consider it first. Right, thank you.
Right. Before we proceed, Chairman's notices. Firstly, you will notice from your agenda that item 10 is exclusion of press and public. It has been my wish that we should not seek to exclude the press and public for the consideration of item 11, which is an appeal. However, there are matters which have been presented to you on orange paper as being confidential. We will need to go into closed session if and only if you wish to make reference to the material which is on these orange sheets. If you can avoid that, we can stay in open session. There will be a meeting, a continuation of this meeting following the planning applications for the cross-party working group dealing with the local plan. That is us as the cross-party working group. I would remind members that there is a planning workshop at 9:15 tomorrow morning for all those who are unable to attend on the 25th of June, and that this is for your own protection. If you have not undertaken planning, you do lay yourself open to legal challenge in circumstances where people challenge our decision and the wisdom with which we made those decisions. So I would urge all members to attend our planning workshop tomorrow. I would also remind you that there is a special meeting at 2 p.m. 1 week from today to consider a single item, which is Kendall's Wharf and the extension of Kendall's Wharf. This could go on for some time in view of the fact that it is going into a nature reserve and certain of the species there are protected. So we will need to take quite a lot of advice on that one, on Kendall's Wharf. So that is special meeting, 2 p.m. 1 week today. I now intend to move to the planning applications, and the first planning application I have is number 10, Driftwood Gardens. Would Joan Gale and Christopher Nichols please come to the table? And after the planning officer has made his report, then I will ask you for your deputations, if you please. Can we have the planning officer's report?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, councillors. The application comprises a proposal to extend and alter an existing detached dwelling house located within Driftwood Gardens. The site lies to the east of Esplanade Gardens and to the north of the beach. The proposed development involves essentially three elements: a single-storey rear extension incorporating a balcony with glass balustrading. This is the proposed block plan, this is the existing. The existing conservatory and extension would be demolished at the rear, and then a single-storey extension across the full width of the property. The second element would be a single-storey extension to the front of the property to link the main house with the existing garage. Again, existing garage, and that's the proposed link there. And finally, external alterations to the east face elevation of the garage, from garage doors to 2 windows and a single door. There are no site-specific land use policies that discourage the principle of residential extensions in this area. Therefore, the design policy PCS 23 of the Portsmouth plan is the most relevant in this case. The extension to the rear, that's the south elevation, would measure 3.3 metres deep and stretch across the whole width of the property for a length of just over 15 metres. So this is the proposed, and it's across the full width of the property. The balcony would be on top of that and would stop short 3 metres from the western edge. So the balustrade, which is a glass balustrading, would finish at that point. These are a couple of photographs to show the existing rear elevation. You have the conservatory built in 87 and the single-storey extension given permission in 96. And And the property you see there on the right is 11 Driftwood Gardens. This is looking to the west, and you have number 10 Esplanade Gardens there, and that's a two-storey extension that was given permission in 1996. So the glass balustrading would come to about that point. This is a view taken from the existing first floor balcony, looking towards 11 Driftwood Gardens, who have a similar balcony area at this point here. And again, looking towards 10 Esplanade Gardens and across to the beach. This extension is considered acceptable in terms of its size, location and overall design in the context of the recipient building and the wider surrounding area. It wouldn't be an unduly prominent feature as seen from the surrounding properties, nor the Esplanade and the beach to the south. The balcony would be much wider than that existing, however it would be set in from the western boundary by 3 metres, which would result in an acceptable relationship with the number 10 Esplanade Gardens to the west. Many of the southernmost properties within Driftwood Gardens have first floor balconies with a degree of mutual overlooking between properties, much in the same way as there exists between numbers 10 and 11 at present. This relationship would be little different from the present situation with respect to the neighbour at number 11. The rear extension and the balcony are therefore considered capable of support. Moving on to the second element is a single-storey brick-faced link between the main house and the existing garage. This would have, where am I? So this is looking through, this is the existing garage, this is looking through, and you can see that little, sorry, shaky hands, pitched roof extension there. And this is the extension infill here. This is a very modest addition and not considered to result in any significant adverse impact on the street scene. This property is well set back from the road or from the residential amenity of the neighbouring properties, including number 10 Esplanade Gardens. The third element relates to alterations to facilitate the conversion of the existing garage to a study connected by this link. The internal conversion to a study for use incidental to the primary function of the main building as a dwelling house does not actually require planning permission, given the absence of any planning conditions restricting the use of the garage. The external alterations, which you can see here, going from a garage door to 2 windows and a single door giving access to an internal store, are considered acceptable in design terms and unlikely to result in any significant loss of amenity to neighbours, including those at numbers 9 and 11 Driftwood Gardens, in terms of privacy or light pollution, given the intervening distances and the height of the boundary wall between numbers 9 and 10. And I have some photos to illustrate that. Existing garage, number 10 Esplanade Gardens, the link would come between there. And this is the existing boundary wall I was talking about. Number 9 is on this side, and you can see in terms of the height of the wall, that's only a little drop down from the existing beam that we have here, and the windows and doors will be below this point. Existing floor plans, it's a 4-bed property at the moment. This is the single-storey extension with a patio in front and a balcony over, and this is the link to the converted study. Whilst the loss of the parking spaces within the garage is not under the control of the local planning authority, it is noted that the proposal does not increase the number of bedrooms within the property as shown on the floor plans, and that the council's parking standards for a 4+ bed property are 2 spaces, which are available in front of the garage building. I'll go back to a photo. You have 2 cars parked there. And therefore it's not considered that the proposal would increase pressure on on-street parking within Driftwood Gardens. You will have noted within the written report the comments raised both within the letters of objection and support. With respect to concerns raised about the potential subdivision of the dwelling into more than one unit of accommodation, it is noted that the floor plans do not show any internal divisions or physical barriers to prevent free flow throughout the property, nor separate entrances. Any subdivision to create more than one unit would be a material change of use for which planning permission would be required. It's understood that the intention of the family members to move in with the current elderly owner to provide support and assistance, but also to have a degree of independence from one another when desired. The proposed extensions and alterations are considered in accordance with policy PCS 23 of the Portsmouth Plan and is capable of support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Gale, you have 6 minutes to make your deputation.
Thank you, Committee and Chair, for allowing me to speak. I'm objecting to the proposal on a number of grounds, although my main concern is the conversion of the garage, as that directly affects my property. The wall that the planning officer indicated is actually my wall, the white wall is actually my wall, and that garage door is only 2 metres from my dining room windows. So any windows that are put in that front of that property will look directly into my dining room. I believe the proposal is a guise as a single-storey extension, but is in fact intention of 3 dwellings. Clearly it is divided. There's 2 kitchens, 2 living rooms, several bedrooms, and I believe the intention is for a flat upstairs, a flat downstairs, and an annex in the garage for the elderly lady. This proposed development would have a really detrimental effect on the area. At present, it is an estate of 25 detached houses, all with garages for parking. The conversion would set precedent for all of the houses to do the same, which would be a disaster. Even with one development, there would be a major effect on the environment with increased nitrates into the Solent, especially as the property, and particularly this one, is directly on the seafront, and certainly converted into 3 dwellings is going to increase the nitrates significantly. So this development alone would create additional sewage pollution. With regards to the loss of the garage, again, this would be extremely detrimental to the estate. The road is very narrow, with access to the particular property even more of a problem with the narrowness of the road. Cars parked on the pavement, creating a hazard for pedestrians and particularly the disabled. And I have actually provided photographs to the council of that problem. Due to the already existing problems with the parking, large vehicles are often unable to pass down the road, which is a huge issue. If a fire engine was needed, it wouldn't gain access. I've had my wall, the one that you saw, and because it continues on, knocked down 3 times because of this. Once by, in fact, the dust cart, which actually created a direct expense to the council because they had to rebuild it. So the loss of the garage would be madness, especially with the property becoming 3 dwellings, creating more need for parking. Without the garage, there would be inadequate parking on the property itself. The proposed window of the garage would look directly onto the road and is within very close proximity, as I say, 2 metres to my actual dining room windows. I would therefore have absolutely no privacy in my own home whatsoever, unless there was a completely obscure glass and no opening windows. The garage is extremely close, and it's difficult to see from that picture. So obviously the garage is my strongest objection because it affects me directly, although the conversion changes has a huge detrimental effect, I believe, on the environment. The whole estate, with the loss of existing parking and the increased need for parking the conversion of the property would create. I think it's immoral and deceitful that they've tried to put this sort of development through under the guise of a single-storey extension. Putting a planning for a single-storey extension, but clearly having the intention of turning it into 3 dwellings. So my objection is not only because of the huge effect to myself and my property, but because of the effects to the estate with the increased parking, the effects to the environment with the increased nitrate pollution. It is also my belief that the proper process to this application has not been followed. I would therefore ask the committee to reject this application, and if not in its entirety, certainly the garage conversion. Both have approved that any front elevation of the garage would have obscure windows and no opening. I hope the committee takes into account the environmental damage the conversion would create, because it's not just a simple single-storey extension, and I have grave concerns for the environment in general and what this sort of development going through the back door can create.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, sir.
Mr. Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here today to represent the applicant, Mrs. Hazel Ledger, who is sitting behind me, the left-hand lady of the three in the corner, but also to represent her mother, Mrs. Nellie Rhymes, who is the owner and occupant of the property at the moment. Mrs. Rhymes is the lady in the middle. Mrs. Rhymes will be 94 in September. She has been a widow now for 2 years, since her husband died in July 2017. They were joint owners and they bought this house new in 1981. In fact, I first saw it before it was even finished. So they have lived there for a very long time. I have 3 points to make. The first is concerning the best interests of the elderly. The second concerns, oddly enough, the Portsmouth housing stock, and thirdly, the detail of the application. After the death of Mr. Michael Rhymes in July 2017, there was a long period of family discussion about what would be in the best interests of Mrs. Rhymes thereafter. Frankly, should she move, should she go into care, should she stay where she is? The plan evolved that the property would be taken over by the younger daughter, Mrs. Hazel Ledger, together with her husband, who currently live in a house in Milton. They would be responsible for the upkeep and refurbishment of the property, which is very much needs after nearly 40 years. And they would be on hand to provide Mrs. Rhymes with any care and support she needs. She is remarkably fit and healthy for a lady of 94. If you saw the D-Day veterans back in June, and some of them were immensely impressive people, Mrs. Rhymes competes with all of those for her mental state, for her physical state. She wants to take care of herself so far as she possibly can, and it is recognised to be in her best interests for her to do so, and to stay in her own home to do so, particularly the home she's lived in for 38 years. By coincidence, yesterday I received through my door a leaflet from Saga proposing care for people to stay in their own homes, exactly what this application is for. The property would remain as a single family dwelling with care for the elderly if needed. It has the facility to bring in live-in carers if needed. We did bring them in for a year when Michael Rhymes was getting very ill, and they lived in at the family's expense, not at any public expense. They lived in the property and would continue to do so. The suggestion that this is an underhand way of converting this property to 3 dwellings is complete rubbish. I can certainly say that I and my wife, who is the elder daughter, have no wish to come down and live here. The younger daughter does propose to do so, and of course, in doing so, she will vacate and sell the property she and her husband occupy in Milton, which then becomes available for the Portsmouth housing stock, an additional item. There is no increase in any sewage or water usage, and no increase in nitrates that may be done as a result of this application. The best interests of the elderly are a matter that the committee will always have in the forefront of its mind. The accompanying papers you will be very familiar with mention Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights. I don't propose to dwell on that, other than to say that there is no basis for any other conclusion that this is in the best interests of the elderly to remain in her own home and look after herself as much as she is able to do. On the detail of the application itself, in fact, without the balcony, we wouldn't be here today. All of the proposed changes fall within the definition of permitted development in the 2015 regulations. It's only the balcony that isn't within those regulations, and yes, it is a whole. The package is there to be complete. But as the planning officer has already confirmed, issues about what the garage building is used for are outside the scope of this committee. Almost every property in Driftwood Gardens has given up using the garage for parking cars. That's part of the parking problem, with which I would not disagree. Interestingly, number 9 has that problem as much as anybody else. Number 10 has the largest provision for motor vehicles of anywhere on this estate. In fact, the piece of ground is the biggest and could accommodate easily 5 vehicles, though it won't be required to do so. The committee therefore has simply to decide, do you give approval for an extension to the balcony? Because fundamentally, that's what this is about. And the planning officer has very kindly said in her report that she recognises the importance of care of the elderly, she recognises the modest nature of the proposed extension and the limitations on the committee's powers, and accordingly I can only urge the committee to accept that. Worry about parking in another context, that's not what this is about. And why we are here today, frankly, I wonder. I do wonder, because I have to say that no elected member of this council has been down to have a look. Nobody's spoken to the applicant, nobody has spoken to the occupant of the property. Nobody's been inside to see what it's about. The planning officer did, but yes, so that is my final point is on that basis. So on those 3 grounds, this is in the public interest to grant, in the best interests of an elderly resident of this city, and is only a very small matter that the committee is required to consider. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Members, we have heard quite a lot of material which is tangential to the application before you, and I would remind you that we are here as a planning committee dealing with a planning application. Are there questions from members, please? Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, could I just be refreshed about this relationship between the window that the objector is concerned about looking into her property? I haven't really got it in my head yet where that is and how it relates to her building.
Yes, Councillor. This photograph is taken from the garden area of number 9 towards the application site and the garage here. So this is the boundary wall that we were looking at from the other side. So the alterations are made to the front of this garage. Let me just pop back to... So they would be the insertion of 2 windows here and here and a pedestrian door into an internal store there. And that's the height of the existing boundary wall that number 9, the lady has confirmed is her wall.
Councillor Hunt.
Where is her dining room window that she's concerned about?
When I took this photograph, I was stood just to the right of the dining room. So the dining room is, as I understand it, the closest to this boundary wall.
How would anybody be able to see into that dining room window? I can't understand.
In my opinion, the existing boundary wall, the existing vegetation is within the neighbour's control, is sufficient to prevent any overlooking, loss of light, pollution.
Yes, Councillor Smythe.
This is just a supplementary question. What level would the windows be at in relation to the existing door? Thank you.
That's the existing sort of white lintel that you saw in the photograph, so it would be literally just under the white lintel. So if I go back to the photo, there, so they would be literally, they would start underneath there.
And the door is the one that's nearest to the
yes, there's a
boundary
pedestrian
wall.
door there into an internal store.
It's not windows. Thank you.
Councillor Stubbs.
2 questions of fact for the officer. Firstly, can you we had a lengthy conversation earlier about nitrates. Can you explain the reasoning in terms of this application and the nitrates policy?
The nitrates issue doesn't relate to extensions to existing dwelling houses. So this is an extension to existing dwelling house. In any event, they're not increasing the number of bedrooms, but it's an existing dwelling house.
And it was said that the only issue that this committee can consider is the balcony. My understanding was there were a few more material points than that. Could you confirm which elements of this are outside of permitted development?
Yes, the single-storey extension could be permitted development if you were looking at it in its own right, but the application hasn't come in like that. It's come in with the balcony, which is a raised platform, therefore needs planning permission, so you can't sort of divorce the two. And actually, the link extension, because that's forward of the front elevation of the house, actually that does need planning permission. The alterations to the front of the garage could be said to materially alter the appearance of the building and therefore need permission as well.
Could I just clarify that the application in front of us is the one to be determined, and even though elements could be cherry picked out and be viewed as PD, because they are forming part of a whole, we have to determine the whole thing. So the whole thing is in front of you to be determined. So bear that in mind when you are obviously making your final decision on this. Also importantly, it was mentioned by the gentleman who spoke in favour of the application. It is very clear, and it must be very clear, that this is an application for extension. There is no proposed subdivision. That would require planning permission in its own right, and therefore would be the subject to consideration because of that. So this application is for an extension, not for subdivision into 3 units, and that's what we are required to determine.
If there are no other questions, may I have comments from members, please? Councillor Norton.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just to make the point clear, really, that I don't feel that this is particularly in public interest because it's the loss of a garage. And secondly, it's really, really difficult for us to make, we have to be clear that we're making judgments on material considerations here. We have to take personal circumstances out of the equation. So I think the decisions that we make today are about material considerations, but I'm not so sure that the loss of privacy really holds up, and therefore personally I'm inclined to vote for this.
Are you therefore proposing the officer's recommendation, Mr. Councillor Norton?
Yes, I'm happy to propose this.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Smythe has seconded. Further comments, please, members. Councillor Smythe.
I just wanted to make a comment. One of the deputies said that we haven't looked at the place. I have had a little snoop around. It would be improper for us to make relationships with the people who are in the houses. That isn't in good practice. But quite often, I know some of us do go around and have a look. I couldn't obviously get to the back, but I did that. Thank you.
Yes, so I'll comment that this is quite common that members do go and have a look. I myself have been down there. And whilst we're waiting for further comment, Councillor Stubbs.
Just to say a few words, really. I mean, I think that this is a difficult application in some ways, and it's been a bit of a surprise to me as it's worked through to find that the usage of the garage sits outside of planning, because there's been other applications, not in the recent past, but some years ago, where that was not the case. But I guess it's just different circumstance on the application. But that has been quite a surprise to me. So we're actually only left with a very limited set of material applications. I mean, for me, the balcony is fine. The link to the garage is fine. I'm not entirely convinced about the change of use in the garage, partly because this is something we don't know, and I know it sits outside of planning and building control. We don't know, because garages are often built to a lower standard, how it stands in terms of noise insulation and so forth. But it's, we're not left here, I don't think we're left here with a lot of things that we can legitimately consider.
Right, members. Councillor Atkins.
I was just going to, I think, second the points that Councillor Stubbs made. I think because this is not an application for subdivision, this is an application which doesn't change the number of bedrooms, which doesn't actually change the use of the majority of the house. There is very little for us to consider. What people do with their garages is up to them if it's within building control. The considerations we have are external appearance, which unfortunately I don't think this. I don't think there's any reason to refuse on this basis. The balcony again doesn't seem to affect the appearance or the nature of the neighbourhood, and the very minor connecting piece of connecting building again doesn't seem to have any substantial impact on the immunity of neighbours or the neighbourhood. So I overall don't think there are any considerations on which we can legitimately refuse this. So I'd be voting in favour of it.
Right, the officer's recommendation has been proposed and seconded. Will all those in favour please show? Those against please show. Those abstaining please show. The officer's recommendation is carried. You, sir, have your planning permission. Thank you very much. To the second application before you, which is 24 Walden Road, Portsmouth, for a change of use from Class C3 to Class C3 or 4. We have no deputations on this, so can I have the officer's report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. The area surrounding the application site is primarily residential and characterised by rows of two-storey terraced properties. The application is located on the northern side of Walden Road and relates to a two-storey mid-terrace dwelling house. Planning permission is sought for the change of use from a dwelling house Class C3 to purposes falling within Class C4 HMO, house of multiple occupation, or Class C3 dwelling house. Internally, the property features a combined kitchen and living room, WC and bedroom at ground floor level, and two bedrooms, a bathroom and a dressing room at first floor level. The internal layout would not change as part of the application. Based on the information that's held by the City Council, of the 87 properties that are within a 50-metre radius of the application site, only one property was identified as being in lawful use as a HMO. No additional HMOs were brought forward to the officer, and including the application site, with the total percentage of HMOs, would bring the area up to 2.29%. Lower than the 10% threshold in which an area is considered to be imbalanced. Further, the proposed development would not result in 3 or more HMOs being adjacent to each other, nor would it result in any residential property being sandwiched between two HMOs. It is therefore concluded that the change of use would not result in an imbalance between HMOs and Class C3 dwelling houses in the area. Above you can see some photos that were taken of the site back in June. To the left you have the front elevation of the property, and to the right you have the rear elevation of the property. Then you have the kitchen/communal area. You can really see the kitchen space in that photo on the left, and the upstairs bathroom on the right. And then you have the upstairs bedroom on the left and the downstairs bedroom on the right. So having regards to the SPD guidelines, it is noted that the combined living area has an under-provision of 3.9 metres squared. However, given that there's an additional space within all the bedrooms and there's other communal areas within the property, such as the dressing room at first floor level, the under-provision is considered to be on balance acceptable. Further, the bathroom is also slightly undersized by 0.3 metres squared, but given that there's an additional WC within the property, this is also considered to be acceptable in planning terms. The City Council's parking standard SPD sets the level of off-road parking facilities for new developments within the city and places a requirement of 2 off-road spaces for Class C4 HMOs with 4 or more bedrooms. It should be noted that the expected level of parking for a C3 dwelling house is the same at 2 spaces being provided. Also, just a quick note that on the nitrates, while it's acknowledged there are ongoing issues around nitrification of the solent due to increased levels of runoff from residential development, as this application is for the change of use of the property from a C3 dwelling house to a C4 use of a dwelling house by 3 or more residents as a HMO, is not considered to represent an increase in overnight stays and therefore would not have a likely significant effect on the solent SPAs or result in an increased level of nitrate discharge. As such, having regards to all of the material planning considerations, raised representations and policy, it is concluded that the development is considered to be acceptable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members' questions. Councillor Hunt.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, what we're going to focus on now is this communal living space, obviously, except all the other points that you've made, Matthew. Just want to, there's a couple of issues. So the dressing room, I don't understand what that is. That appears to be the hallway, actually. There's sort of one door going in, one door going into the bathroom, but okay, so we'll just leave that as it is at the moment. But we've had some battles in this committee, certainly when I was last here, about communal spaces, and about people living together in a family unit, and we've thrown out applications where the communal space was not big enough, or was not by the required standard, rather. How does extra space in one person's bedroom, how does that make up the fact that we are not delivering, or this plan doesn't deliver the required standard? Because I've never heard that before.
Yes, so it's been established in a few appeal decisions that, such as Whisper Road, which was passed by an inspector on room sizes, when that had an under-provision of, I think it was about 2 metres squared, because extra space within each individual's living room would allow them to store items that would otherwise be stored in a communal area, or carry out things that would normally do in a communal space. The size in a bedroom can be shown to make up for an under-provision in a communal space.
Councillor Smythe. Then Councillor Stubbs after that.
Just following this up, I would imagine that some of the mitigation for the small living dining room was ameliorated by the kitchen being immediately next door. And I wondered why somebody hadn't suggested moving the kitchen unit at the top of the drawing along a bit towards the bathroom wall, which would give the required additional space in the living room. It doesn't look like, it looks like it's kitchen units, and if it was just moved on a bit, it would give a bit of extra space. Can I see the picture of that? Yes. Yes, exactly. That makes my point exactly. Do you see where the kitchen on the left-hand side of the picture on the left? Additional space could be generated by moving that whole unit down towards the bathroom wall, towards the lavatory wall. Yes, the question is, did anybody consider that, and is there any reason not to do it?
So I'd just like to point out for clarification, the kitchen in terms of the floor space does end at the black line. The kitchen countertops do leave a space, but it would be presumed that it will be used for, say, where the fridge is stored or bin space. But the kitchen actually does run up to the black line in those floor plans.
The black line doesn't extend in the floor plans there.
The two spaces at the end will be the fridge freezer on one side and the washing machine and tumble dryer on the other.
That's helpful.
That's talking logically.
Right. Councillor Stubbs, then Councillor Pitt.
In terms of communal area, is there anything in policy that says it has to be one continuous block? I'm just wondering, looking at this layout, I mean, the applicant could perhaps legitimately rebrand what on here is dressing room as upstairs living room, basically. So how does that work?
So it does give mention within the HMO SPD that the combined living space is defined as a single, typically open plan space. So you presume that would mean that it would have to be all conjoined as one to be considered.
Councillor Pitt.
A bit confused here, Chair. We've looked at loads of these applications. There is no dividing wall between the living dining room and the kitchen.
Exactly.
There is no door between the two spaces. We've seen other applications come in calling this combined kitchen living dining space. The kitchen's not counted into the room sizes at all. What is the problem here? I don't understand it. We've the advice around the communal living standards, and I'm not saying I'm a great fan of counting kitchens in, but there's been loads of other applications where we've been asked to, and in this report we're not seeing any reference to the fact that the kitchen even exists. It's almost like it's been eliminated from the house completely. Where we've got the toilet provision downstairs, that clearly more than mitigates against the small amount of the bathroom. So that doesn't seem to be an issue. As Councillor Hunt said, we've got this room that's described as a dressing room, but presumably that is going to be used by more than one of the bedrooms and therefore has a communal element. I'm not sure. Is this an issue that the way the application's been presented has made you look at the decision in this particular way? Because I'm a bit confused around all of that.
So because the kitchen, living room and dining room has been considered as one large communal area, it still only has a combined area of 20 square metres, which is 4 metres lower than the...
Does that include the bits where we're now told things are going to go? Does that have more of an impact on it then?
That would include, so the area of the kitchen living room runs from this black line down around there. It does not include this small lean-to area at the end.
Yeah, just a quick question from me. Listen, I don't use a dressing room, so forgive me if I'm making a comment which is lost here. But we've got an application here with a bathroom which is smaller than what it should be, and potentially a redundant room next to it. Were there any questions or considerations about extending the bathroom to include that space so that it wasn't below the required standard?
There isn't any suggestion here that being slightly substandard in size for the bathroom, it makes this unlivable. And obviously this property has the advantage of a second WC provision. I'd strongly recommend that members wouldn't look to refuse something on the basis of a small shortfall on a bathroom that's otherwise going to meet the needs of those occupiers. The key issue is this one on the ground floor about the adequacy of the combined living, dining, kitchen area, and whether to some degree it's compensated by an area that somebody could sit and read the newspaper quietly if you put a chair there, call it a snug rather than a dressing room.
Councillor Pitt.
Chair, we had a planning application before us 2 or 3 months ago where there was effectively a cupboard off a downstairs loo in a kitchen that was counted in with the communal living space, and I questioned at the time whether it was appropriate to count it in because people could only use it by going and standing in it, and they could only do so if no one was using the toilet, and I was assured that that was appropriate because it was a communal space, and because we've already heard that storage within bedrooms is part of how you look at the appropriate nature of the communal space. So the argument that that store cupboard existed, albeit in a not terribly useful place, was a reason to add it in. So I still go back to what I said just now. I don't understand how when you add up the square meterage of the living, dining room, kitchen and dressing room, which comes to 24.66, not 20.1, it therefore is over 24 metres of communal usable space within the property. Is that correct or not correct? Just to add in, the lean-to at the back is also presumably able to be used by more than one person.
We'll come to comments in a moment. We'll take your question next, Councillor Stubbs. Then I think
It's just been touched on, actually. So the regulation which used to apply at one time, that you couldn't have a toilet straight off a kitchen, that's all gone, hasn't it? So if they remove the door between that little bit of lean-to space there, that then they're over. Because they've added on about 3 square metres just on that bit there.
Just a matter of clarification on the living, dining room and the kitchen calculation. That's one calculation. Looking at the SPD here, it's saying that it's a single. So if you look at that on its own, it would be below because it's not. If you add in the dressing room upstairs, it is over. As the officer identified on other appeals where we've been challenged on this, the inspector has accepted remote areas from the living room, dining room as a contribution towards the communal area. I think that the point about these SPD and also with planning policies, they're there as a guide to actually take us forward, and it is within the gift of the local the members here today to consider that and to say, well, actually it's a bit substandard here, but it's okay if you bring in the other side, and that's a matter of planning balance, which we talked about when we were doing the training, and the officers actually done the same thing, bearing in mind the inspector's decision. So considering everything, there's a planning balance taking place that yes, the living room, living area in isolation is substandard, and hence it being in front of the members here, but cumulatively with other elements, they thought it's acceptable, particularly that's been accepted by inspectors. So it is a bit of a guide. It is there to provide you with a basic information, but it's for you to make those interpretations of whether or not you are content with the substandard nature of that main living area, and whether or not you accept the additional area as being accepted to offset that.
On the basis, question from the Chair, on the basis of previous planning decisions which have been overturned by Her Majesty's Planning Inspectorate, do you think we would be considered safe to reject this, given that there is, on space grounds, given that there is this additional lean-to and this additional dressing room available?
As already indicated by my colleague, I think we've put it to you on the basis that we don't think that we would be successful. We're basically carrying out a planning balance exercise, and part of that would be considering other appeal decisions where we haven't been successful. So they've gone through that planning balance, and that planning balance will always be looking to think, well, do we have sufficient justification to refuse the application? And the decision reached by the officer, and my advice is, I don't think that we probably would be successful if we were likely to refuse this, because there's appeal decisions which would find against us.
Councillor Oudis and Councillor Atkins.
I need to ask, if you got rid of the living room door from the hallway and just made it one big open space, would that be communal living space?
I don't think you can get rid of the door because that's a building control issue, a fire regulation issue, because I think that the kitchen you'd have to, as a safe means of escape, so you wouldn't be able to take the door off and include it. But it's not a planning thing.
Councillor Atkins.
I mean, maybe I'm being, the room is probably too small anyway, but maybe I'm being over. Could we put a condition on it, and is this relevant at all, making sure that dressing room is never used as a bedroom, or is that not something we should even consider?
Were that to be used as a bedroom, it would be something which would have to come back, surely, as because, yeah.
We could condition it. It would be very difficult to enforce at a future point in time. It's one of these issues that if it continues as a residential unit and someone wanted to make it into a small bedroom for themselves, then, would that be considered to be unduly onerous? It is a consideration. It's one of those things forward, but I think it would actually be quite difficult for us to enforce. And one of the tests of conditions is if we don't think we can reliably fall back on that as an enforceable position, and we should be thinking carefully about putting that as a condition.
Councillor Pitt.
Just to kind of agree, but also expand a little bit on what Sim's just said. This is not an application for C4, it's an application for C3, C4, so it does mean it can still be lived in by a family, and if they wanted to use that as anything other than a dressing room, nobody can or should stop them from doing so. However, if it was to be used as a C4, then it could not be a bedroom because it's under the minimum space standards anyway, so if an application ever came back to suggest that it could be, we would, I certainly would expect that the committee would get a recommendation for refusal from the officers, bearing in mind it doesn't meet our required standards. So I think that kind of covers that off.
Right. Comments, members? Councillor Jonas.
Yeah, whether we like it or not, this committee can actually set precedents. And if we agree to this, and the living dining room, whatever you want to call it, is not big enough, it's not big enough. People talk about we could knock the window out and extend along inside the kitchen. It's all ifs, buts, maybes, but what's in front of us is not suitable, not up to our standards. Whether people want to go upstairs and sit in the dressing room, that's again up to them, but we're here to decide on what's in front of us, and this living dining room does not come up to standards. Thank you.
Are you proposing refusal? Oh, right. Okay. Councillor Oudis.
I'm not going to propose anything, but I just want to say, if this was used as a family house, even after granting C3, C4 or whatever, then it'd be marketed as a 3-bedroom house on Rightmove or whatever, when I would class this as a 2-bedroom house with 2 communal spaces, and I feel kind of like we're cramming a family in. And then I kind of look at the multiple use occupation and go, are we cramming 3 sets of people in? Because I feel like we wouldn't be. But on a family basis, I feel like it's kind of like you're cramming a family in. You'll be advertising your property for more money, because if I was looking for a 3-bedroom property and I went to visit this without kind of realising that I only had communal living space, I would be like, well, this clearly is not a 3-bedroom property. So I just wanted to make that general comment about it. I'm kind of torn about what's going on right now, so I'd like other people to join in with my conversation.
Councillor Stubbs, then Councillor Hunt.
Well, firstly, I think it's been clear from our discussion that the only material consideration is the amount of communal space and all of the other issues which arise on occasion with houses of multiple occupation, such as the 10% rule do not apply in this case. I think that we are looking at an application which yes, it is just a little below on communal space, but quite frankly, I can stitch together a narrative which says that the amount of space available for occupants still, nonetheless, in practice, exceeds the requirement. And so on that basis, I'm going to propose the officer's recommendation.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Smythe got in before Councillor Atkins. Councillor Hunt.
So I'm going to move a refusal because the communal space is not nearly enough. And I have to say to members here, I mean, following up on Councillor Udy's comments, thank you, that if you were, so this is for up to 6 unrelated people, but if you're a family of 6, you know, your mum and dad, presumably, or 2 dads or 2 mums, and 4 kids, you'd be moving out this property and you'd be looking to find a bigger home for your family. So I look at this and I say to myself, whether anybody agrees with me or not, it's irrelevant as far as I'm concerned, but you've got 4 rings there, and you're going to have people at the rings, and I'm just going to practicalities, you're going to have people at the sink, and you know, back to back. I'm going to practicalities and how people enjoy their homes and where they live. And in the morning, you've got 6 people, let's say, going to work, wanting to have their breakfast. They've got those 4 rings, they've got 1 sink. And if before that, unless they stagger the times that they get up, they've got 1 bath. And I can't see anything, a shower or anything else. There's a sink there, so if it's 6 guys, they've got to go in there and find somewhere to shave, or get showered, or have a bath, or whatever they do, before they go to work. And I don't know about most people, but most regular people, before they go to work, tend to get in the shower and get clean before they go to work or they come home. I mean, Councillor Yu is absolutely right. I mean, it is cramming. This is too small for its intended purpose. But there's no real policies covering that apart from this communal space. And I very much hear what the planning officers very kindly pointed out to us about Wisborough Road. But it's too small. And don't expect me to vote for it. I think it's wrong. And I'm going to move the refusal on the grounds of lack of communal space. It's not mentioned in the City Council.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that? That is, Councillor Jonas has seconded that. Councillor Pitt has indicated he wishes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I'm minded to agree with what Councillor Hunt said on this one. I'm usually a stickler for saying the rules are the rules, and that if the space standards are all met, then we should grant permission. But in this particular case, I think this is an example of the sort of thing we don't really want to see at Planning Committee, which is the availability of a house in multiple occupation, which has made no effort to accommodate the living requirements of people for it to be a house in multiple occupation. If the amendment had been made to reconfigure the living, dining, kitchen area to make it more open, make the space more fluid, maybe address the lean-to at the back and open all that through and create a nice contemporary through space there, that might have been a different argument if there had been proposals around, you know, improving the bathroom space or even putting a shower room in where that dressing room is. We're not seeing any of that in this application, so we're being asked to consider if this was granted C3/C4, and let's be clear, it will get a licence for 5 adults to live in it, is it suitable? And it's not. So we have an opportunity to stick to our space standards, and on this occasion, and it is slightly unusual for me, but on this occasion, for the reasons that I've just given, I'm going to support the refusal.
Councillor Norton.
Councillor Pitt talks about, you know, it being slightly unusual. Well, it's slightly unusual that I agree with Councillor Pitt on this. I think, yes, I'm satisfied that there are, it falls within the 10% HMOs within the area, but I think there's probably a reason why there are only so few HMOs in the area. It's because the houses there are particularly small. The suggestion that a living space that doesn't meet the required standard is okay because it meets it in the bedroom is not one that sits comfortably with me, because that's what forcing people into bedrooms, isn't it? But also, it's the precedent for me that it sets. If we're looking at numbers here, there's a required standard, 2 of the rooms don't meet the required standard, and therefore, you know, rules are rules. So it's my opinion on that.
No further comments. We move to the...
I think so. I have some comments.
Sorry. Councillor Atkins just indicated, and then Mr. Manley would like to make a comment.
All I wanted to say is that I have a strong belief that this is right on the borderline of what we'd ever say yes to. It's not very suitable, and I have concerns about how the dressing room is going to be used if in a house in multiple occupation. The issue for me is, I think because of the dressing room adding to the communal space, I think we're very likely to lose on appeal if we reject this, and for that reason, because I don't want to waste the council's money, I'm going to vote in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Manley?
Just as a clarification, obviously the officers carried out a planning balance. In this instance, you're completely entitled, the decision rests with yourselves, and you're also making that planning balance. The fact that you disagree with the officer is absolutely fine, and I think in terms of actually if you are minded to refuse it, then that's entirely up to do and within your gift to do if that's so minded to do so, because it is based upon the standard. You don't agree that the standards can be met, and you don't agree that the using both of them is an acceptable standard, and that's entirely fine. I don't see any particular problem with that. Obviously our recommendation is an approval, but obviously if members are minded to refuse it, then obviously there's a policy basis to do that.
Right. I intend to move to the vote. The first proposal was proposed by Councillor Stubbs, seconded by Councillor Smythe for approval. Those in favour of approval, please show. That is 3. Those who are otherwise minded against approval, please show. 5. Therefore, the planning application falls. Thank you very much. We don't need to, because it is not going through. Just to make 110% sure, my legal advice is that we must take the second, which is proposed by Councillor Hunt, seconded by Councillor Jonas, that we refuse this planning application. Those in favour of refusal, please show. That is 5. Those against refusal, please show. 1. Thank you, members. The application is refused. We now move, members, to item 03, which is 110 Stubbington Avenue. Once again, change of use from dwelling house C3 to C3, C4. There are no deputations on this one, so as soon as the plans have been distributed, we will take the officer's report. Yeah. And before we start, could I first of all welcome the officer and ask her to introduce herself to ourselves and to the general public.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Hannah Goldsmith, I'm Planning Officer.
May we have your report, please?
Good afternoon, members. Before I start my presentation, I would just like to draw your attention to the Supplementary Matters report, which includes the following updates. In the officer report, there's been an error in the HMO count data. The correct number of properties within the 50-metre radius of the site is 59 and not 46. The HMO data that's being published on the Council's website is correct, and the correct figures and calculations are included in this presentation. In addition, one representation has been received following the publication of the committee report, which raised 19 additional properties in the area as potential HMOs. This will be covered later in the presentation. This application seeks planning permission for the change of use from dwelling house Class C3 to purposes falling within Class C4 house in multiple occupation or Class C3 dwelling house. This application relates to 110 Stubbington Avenue, a 2-storey mid-terrace dwelling situated to the south of Stubbington Avenue. The surrounding area is characterised by rows of terrace properties of similar size and design. The dwelling is set back from the highway by a small front garden, which is used for the storage of waste and recycling. The property benefits from an enclosed garden to the rear of the dwelling. The existing property comprises of a kitchen, dining room, living room and conservatory with a WC at ground floor level, and 3 bedrooms, a study and a bathroom at first floor level. The majority of the internal layout would remain unchanged. However, the existing living room to the front of the property would be converted into a bedroom. Based on the information held by the City Council, of the 59 properties within a 50-metre radius of the application site, no properties were identified as lawful HMOs. Whilst this is the best available data to the local planning authority and is updated on a regular basis, there are occasions where properties have been included or omitted from the database in error, or have lawfully changed their use away from Class C4 HMOs without requiring express permission of the LPA. Therefore, based on the information held by the City Council, of the 59 properties within a 50-metre radius of the application site, the granting of this permission would increase the percentage of HMOs to 1.69%. However, as previously mentioned, 19 additional properties were brought to the attention of the LPA via representation. Following further investigation, the LPA considers that there may be one additional HMO which was not included in the initial data capture. It is not known if the identified property is an authorised HMO or unauthorised, and as such the enforcement team is investigating the matter. However, should this property transpire to be an HMO, it would increase the overall percentage of HMOs to 3.3% and would not tip the balance beyond the 10% policy threshold. Furthermore, the proposed development would not result in 3 or more HMOs adjacent to each other, nor would it result in any residential property being sandwiched between 2 HMOs. Therefore, it is considered that the community is not already imbalanced by a concentration of the HMO uses, and this application would not result in an imbalance of such uses. The HMO supplementary planning document states a living room serving 3 to 6 persons should have a floor space of 11 square metres. Whilst it is noticed that the existing living room would be converted into an additional bedroom, the remaining living room and conservatory to the rear of the property would measure 20.7 square metres, therefore exceeding the requirements. In addition, the kitchen dining out would measure 16 square metres, again exceeding the requirements in the SPD, which states a kitchen serving 3 to 6 persons must have a floor space of 7 metres squared. The applicant has confirmed that each of the 4 bedrooms will be single occupancy. All 4 bedrooms exceed the space standards of single bedrooms set out in the HMO SPD. Bedroom 3 upstairs and bedroom 4 upstairs. The HMO SPD states that for HMO for 1 to 4 persons, there must be at least 1 bathroom and separate WC. Whilst it is noted that the upstairs bathroom measures slightly undersized, the upstairs bathroom and downstairs WC combined would exceed the space requirements. The property complies with the space guidelines set out in the supplementary planning document and is therefore considered to provide an adequate standard of living. Furthermore, no objection was raised by the private sector housing.
Thank you. Questions, members?
Okay. This slide shows the rear garden which can provide weatherproof storage for 4 bicycles.
My apologies.
This would be imposed by way of condition. The City Council's Parking Standards SPD sets out the level of off-road parking facilities for new developments within the city and places a requirement of 2 off-road spaces for Class C4 HMOs with 4 or more bedrooms. No off-road parking could be provided at this site, but that is the same for the current Class C3 use for a similar level of occupation to the proposed. As such, a refusal on parking grounds could not be sustained. All other matters relating to amenity and waste storage have been outlined in the officer's report. Having regards to all material considerations, raised representations and planning policy, it is concluded that the proposed development is acceptable and complies with relevant policies within the Portsmouth local plan. But during the course of the application, it was brought to the attention of the local planning authority that due to the property being in the process of being sold, the property is not within the applicant's ownership. Whilst it is possible to apply for planning permission for land you do not own, the relevant owners must be informed. Consequently, notice was served on the current owners and the correct ownership certificate was submitted. In addition, the LPA have consulted the current owner for 21 days. This consultation period is still ongoing and due to finish on the 22nd of July. Therefore, subject to no further representations raised, new material planning issues, delegated authority is sought to the Assistant Director of Planning and Economic Growth to issue the decision after the expiry of the consultation period to grant conditional permission.
Point of order, Chair. I don't know quite appropriate, but it has occurred to me that I live quite close to this property down the road. Should that be something I declare as a prejudicial or personal interest?
Could I come and have a quiet word with you?
Thank you for the report. My apologies for interrupting you. It shows the enthusiasm of the chair. Members, whilst the quiet consultation is going on in the corner, are there questions on this planning application? Councillor Udi.
That was a lovely presentation, by the way. It was great. I just want to clarify that the person that has applied for this change of use does not own that property, to say it in like layman's terms. Just like, yes.
From the information I've been given, they do not own the property.
Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, similarly, thank you very much for your presentation and today.
I'm going to step out of the room for this application.
Okay, we will call you back at the end of this item.
I just wondered, does the council have any rules about outside loos?
Yes, I was wondering the same thing.
Just want to know, because there's an outside loo here, by the look of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wait.
Do we want to encourage that sort of thing?
If it's 1955.
Just find the layout plan.
Members, please think amongst yourselves while the discussion is going on.
Chair, can I suggest a 5-10 minute adjournment? Can we do that mid-item?
Is Kieran nodding?
Are you ready to answer if you want to
Do you want more time to discuss this?
5 minutes.
No, you're okay. No, we have the response coming now. I suggest we crack on because we've got a long agenda today after these 5 planning applications. Mr. Manley.
The supplementary planning document is actually silent on this, so it is a matter of plain judgment by yourselves as to whether or not you consider that the outside toilet would be sufficient to offset the slightly substandard main toilet in the property, or whether or not you say, well, actually, we could include it. So it is a matter of judgment for you to make that decision on, but as I say, the SPD is silent, unfortunately, so there is no guide that specifically excludes it.
I don't want a question, I'll move from waiting.
Councillor Pitt, Councillor Smythe, Councillor Jonas.
Mine is just that I know that I won't get a vote, but I feel I must be excused now for 5. I'll come back in after the next item.
Is this for... Okay.
Yeah. Councillor Jonas just needs a comfort break, that's all. That's what he's saying.
In which case, I think it would be unfair on Councillor Jonas there will be now a short 10-minute break. My apologies to the members of the public gallery, but there will now be a 10-minute break and then we will resume.
Trying to get up, yeah. That was uncommon though.
Excuse me, Judith. Sorry. You're right. I was just wondering if you happened to know at full council yesterday which way Lynn Stagg voted with the parking plan motion.
Yes, I think she voted oddly, and I think
in favour?
I think she did.
Because it's not enough, because I got the numbers right. 14 people voted against it.
I wouldn't stand up in court and say so, but that was my impression.
Okay.
So you can ask somebody else in the Labour group who would have seen, but I'm sure she did. In fact,
I'll check with, I'll see if everyone's gone.
I mean, actually, to be fair, there's no reason why she wouldn't vote.
No,
because
it's
it was
just...
her motion was a extension of that.
Yeah, and as far as I can tell, it's not making any change to what they're doing at the moment. It's just adding on an additional strategic plan. It's not saying stop what you're doing.
No, I think it was. I did think about it at the time, and I think it was quite consistent. I don't think you can make out inconsistency.
It didn't.
Just because somebody votes against your amendment doesn't mean to say you can't vote against the amendment.
Yeah.
So I think it was okay, but I did notice it, and I thought at the time that's very.
I didn't see what way she voted.
No,
14 people voted against.
I think you're right.
Thank you.
But I don't think it's not.
No.
Which one are you? I don't think this one's ready.
No, mine was a temporary bypass the kid and halfway, so nothing brilliant, so I'll take it out next week.
Oh, I see, so they take the study down.
Yeah, I've got a very long plastic tube.
You all have to bring them back. There's always someone worse off. That's as far as they'll open, unfortunately. That's oh my God. No, of course, you should try your
You were still there for the car plan? Are you there for the car plan?
Yes.
14 people voted against it on the news sources and motion. So that's not them. It's going to vote. Trying to work out I know, I said
I'm free of all that, all my lot's going.
The other one, the other bridge one is, yeah, trade. Done horrible things, done horrible things in jail. But at least I think it's confident is it right there? I don't know what you mean. You're probably maybe you're.
No, because it's Portsmouth.
I was just
Could you go around? Didn't know this. Oh, yeah. No, I knew that you lived in Africa. How often are you there then? Wow, okay. I also want to check with the parking plan, it's not saying, because it was passed, it's not saying we'll stop what's currently being done, the rolling programme, and carry out the citywide, it's just we'll also do a citywide review, just a review, like a plan.
That's why I got that way, because she continually got pushed at the back. But it's wrong. That's right. Anybody's afraid of
Oh my god.
that's the why I say it's such a work. I intend to start as soon as Councillor Pitt and Councillor Udi manage to find their way back. They've probably got lost. Members, I trust that members may have a good recollection of the excellent presentation. We stop for consideration of the sanitary provision of this house, whether this is suitable. Can I have a comment on this from Mr. Manley, please, and then we will take further questions.
Thank you, Chair. As I said before the break, the SPD is actually silent on the toilet. Now, we've in the officer's report, they've added that, the total area of that, to the total provision for the toilets, because the inside toilet and bathroom is actually slightly substandard. As I say, it is a planning balance for you to undertake. If you don't consider that if you're not happy with combining those, bearing in mind one of them is an outside toilet, then it's completely within your gift to make a decision on that basis. And if you were to come up with a reason for refusal, obviously it would be on the basis that you didn't think that it met the SPD in terms of minimum space size for the bathroom toilet.
Councillor Smythe.
It's a question. Would it make a difference if the WC door was turned round to open into the conservatory?
The application in front of us is for one to be determined, so whilst there may be solutions to overcome problems regarding this in the future, the application in front of us actually has an outside served toilet.
I understood it was normal practice to discuss the application in advance with an applicant, to generally save time and that sort of thing. Officers will enter into discussions with them. Obviously, in this instance, the officers considered that the outside toilet provision was acceptable. We are where we are with that, and it's your decision now as to whether or not you consider that's acceptable or not. I haven't made up my mind on this application, but could we condition that if we needed to?
No, I don't think we can.
The application, I think it would be very difficult for us to condition that because it's quite a substantial piece of work, because it wouldn't just be a case of taking the door off. I think it would be unreasonable for us to do that. I think if you are unhappy with the overall provision, you don't think that the the outside toilet is sufficient to offset, then you need to consider that as part of your final decision.
Councillor Pitt.
Hey, Chair. In the report where we look at the required standard for the room sizes, it's a bit misleading really, because it says the required standard is all 7.5 metres square, and that's because all of the rooms, and according to the sorry, I'm surrounded by bits of paper, according to the floor layout, it does say at the top specifically all rooms for single use. However, is it not the case that private sector housing, with the room sizes that they have there, could licence it for up to 6 people and not just 4?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so second question then, on the basis that it's asked, the report is asking us to look at this as if a maximum of 4 people can live there, but planning consent of C4 would enable up to 6 people to live there, and although there is a separation between licensing and planning, nevertheless, I think that is misleading, because it should be telling us what the potential occupancy could be. And the reason I say that is the previous application that we looked at did, and we have to have consistency between how these things are presented to us to come to a balanced view. So on that basis, I would say that the report is not helpful and could actually make us think that the maximum of 4 people are going to live here. Is that fair?
I think it's setting out what the applicant's intentions are, but the grant of planning permission for C4, if there's space for up to 6 persons, is for up to 6 persons. And I accept the point that it probably would have been helpful under the required standard, maybe to have put 7.5 square metres / 11.5 square metres to help that understanding that some of those rooms would be of a size capable of accommodating 2 persons, obviously up to a maximum of 6 in the building.
Other questions, members? Councillor Hunt?
I had 2. Look, I'm totally dim, okay? You just have to get used to it.
Can I agree with you?
Thank you. So we're talking here about ensuite, I might be dim, but I get it right. About ensuite 1, and is the area provided is 2.84 metres, and the required standard is unspecified. So what does that line mean? If I don't understand it, how can Mr. and Mrs. Bloggs who come in here even begin to understand it?
There is no requirement.
Am I the right report?
No, you're not.
Well, I've gone forward then. There you are.
16's the one you want.
16.
Right. I need to say you do, you already did.
Yeah. So I'm particularly concerned, so that, I've gone forward, I beg your pardon. So the power of technology, and people are watching this, so I've gone forward. A member of the public has called in. I'm very happy to ask the question. Is the fact that is it not implicit in the SPD that all the facilities should be inside the building? I mean, it's just not common sense, or you say it's silent, but is it not implicit that all these facilities will actually be inside the building?
There just is no mention of it. In fact, I can't recall, I don't go to water committees, I don't recall seeing an outside WC on an HMO before.
So, for example, we could go put the kitchen outside, or if we move into this kind of realm, we've got all sorts of facilities outside. You know, into the kitchen, into the conservatory, things like this. So it's not a very good thing that we need to talk about. And I'm wondering if we don't need to, when we get to comments, that we don't need to defer this. So you go back and see the applicant, and see if they can come and sort this out.
Just to repeat what Mr. Manley had already said, it's a matter of judgment for you whether you want to include that outside WC as meeting part of a shortfall, or whether you ignore that and the only facilities available is the first floor bathroom at 3 square metres.
Comments, members? Councillor Udi got in before Councillor Pitt.
Right then. So what we're looking at here is that we've potentially got a landlord, and watch my words here, is coming in, maybe thinking about buying the building and turning it into a HMO. I know he's going to try and maybe do the C3, C4, the dual use or whatever, but to here, they know if they add the bathrooms up, it hits the required space standard, but I reckon we could definitely fight that being an outside toilet. The study there, they haven't even been bothered to even say, well, I'll convert the house and include the study and make a bigger bedroom. It is plainly obvious that they're coming in to see, because they could probably get away at appeal, maybe fighting this about the toilet space, but I really think that they just couldn't be bothered. They're chancing it with us. It's definitely cramming more people in, and I think I would like to move to refuse this on the basis of minimum size space standards, because I think an outside toilet is in no way useful in this day and age. As planning officers have said, they haven't seen an outside toilet used in a HMO before, and I would move for refusal of this application.
So you're moving the refusal on the grounds that the toilet facilities are inadequate, A, in size interior, and B, that an outside toilet is unacceptable to make up the size standard. Correct? Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Hunt. Comments from other comments from members? Councillor Jonas, then Councillor Stubbs.
This is just an observation, Chairman. Those of us of a more advanced age will remember the times when we used to cook inside and use the toilet outside, whereas nowadays with a barbecue we cook outside and have a toilet inside. I think a lot of emphasis, and maybe too much emphasis, is put on the fact that this is an outside loo, but I reserve my right to vote accordingly.
Councillor Stubbs, I have an outside loo, and it is very useful upon the times. Councillor Jonas, very useful at times, especially when things are coming precious. Okay, Councillor Stubbs.
In this day and age, an outside toilet isn't really suitable living accommodation, but I'm not personally convinced that we should move straight to refusal at this point. I think it's maybe better dealt with through a deferral and asking for the applicant to see if they wish to make any changes before making a final determination on this. So I'm going to propose deferral.
Councillor North.
Yeah, and just to say on that, I mean, I don't disagree with Councillor Udi's comments, but I do think there's simple fixes. So deferral might give the applicant an opportunity to fix them.
I must say, a comment from me, looking at the structures and where the plumbing is located, it's going to be quite a difficult fix, but it might be done. Councillor Pitt.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit concerned, looking at two of these applications that we've looked at today, that we're going to start to see a trend of applications coming in where no effort's been made to show how it will be used as an HMO, just that it ticks the boxes in terms of room sizes, and that's going to remove a level of scrutiny that this committee has fought to have over the living arrangements that are being provided in C4 HMOs. And that's something that makes me feel extremely uncomfortable. We all know that planning law is a bit of a minefield at the best of times, but the reason that we asked for room standards and for plans and to have visibility what was going on was to make sure that shared accommodation provided in this city was of an adequate standard for adult people to share. If we're going to start accepting that we've ticked the room boxes, we've got no sight of what this might actually look like as an HMO, then that's fine. When we have a material reason not to go down that route, I think that would be a mistake. The bathroom that's supplied is under the minimum standards, regardless of whether or not your personal arrangements with an outside toilet are beneficial or not. And I too remember the days when they were more the norm. I don't think that we should be setting that precedent. So I'm going to... did somebody move refusal? Claire did. I'll second Councillor Udi's motion.
Councillor Hunt had already done so. Councillor Hunt, then Councillor Smythe.
So I get this is almost like deja vu. We start to have a lot of problems, Mr. Manley, with these HMOs about 3, 4 years ago. And this committee decided, my request, that we bring every single HMO to this committee. I don't want to go back down this route because that's not a clever thing to do, but we saw a huge increase in the character of HMOs. They became rather good, didn't they? Mm-hmm. So I just hope very much that we can tighten up on this, and maybe, Mr. Chairman, as a process, because I know there's some consideration going on at the SPD, we look at this issue of outside facilities just to tighten that little bit up. Is that all right? But I still want to refuse it.
Sorry? Yes, surely.
Yeah, just to confirm that where we're approving anything under, we don't approve anything under delegated power if it doesn't meet the standards. So if it's meeting the standards, so where it doesn't, we always bring them up, hence them being here. So just to reassure you that we're not we are, in all cases where they are acceptable, we're fine with that. It's when they don't that we bring them in front of you to make a balanced planning consideration.
Right, Councillor Smythe.
I mean, this WC at the back, the outdoor one, could have been turned around, I think, and it hasn't been. It's a great shame. But because at the moment, what it does is to give, it doesn't get rid of the other objection I have to it, which is if you're living in one of the bedrooms, I certainly wouldn't fancy the long walk down the stairs right through the kitchen dining room, where people may be having their breakfast, long past the lounge and outside and into the rain in my 90s. So I think it's unacceptable.
Okay, members, the first proposal before you was for refusal. Sorry?
But you've got the deferral first.
Deferral takes precedent. Sorry. Those members who are in favour of deferral, please show. Those members against deferral, please show. We are not deferring. We therefore come to the recommendation for refusal. Those in favour of refusal, please show. That is unanimous. Planning application is refused. We now come to number 56 Shadwell Road. I would advise members that one of the deputies, for very good reasons...
Sorry, sir, can I... Chair, can we get Councillor Atkins in? Is that okay?
Yes, sure.
Thanks.
Okay, sorry. Amazing one. Members, we have a number of deputations on this. One of the deputies, Mr. Smith, for good reason, is unable to present his own deputation. I have invited him to the table and I will read his deputation on his behalf. So can I have Mrs. Russell, Mr. Smith and either Dane Norman or Chris Park to the table, please. I think, members, yes, we'll wait for the papers to be distributed. Sorry. Okay. Right, officer's report then. We'll take the officer's report. Could the officer introduce herself? Because, once again, someone who is new to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Summer Sharp, Planning Officer. Good afternoon, members. Before I start, I would like to draw your attention to the supplementary matters. To confirm, 2 petitions have been received, one with 92 signatures and the other with 106. No further issues were raised to those previously known. Separately to these, 2 further objections have been received, reiterating previous concerns raised. In the officer report, there has been an error in the HMO count data. The correct number of properties within the 50-metre radius is 66. The previous figure was lower than the correct amount of properties, thus lowering the overall percentage. The information provided on the Council's website is correct, and the correct figures and calculations are included in this report. The proposal is for a change of use from dwelling house Class C3 to purposes falling within Class C4, house of multiple occupation, HMO, or Class C3. The application site is a 2-storey mid-terrace property. The surrounding area is residential, comprising a dense group of terrace properties. The property is set back by a forecourt which would be used for refuse and storage. Starting with the ground floor layout, the existing ground floor comprises a hall, lounge, dining room, pantry and kitchen. This application proposes internal alterations to create 2 number bedrooms with 2 en-suites and a communal open plan living space. At first floor, the application proposes the addition of 1 number en-suite to serve bedroom number 1. Other than the addition of the en-suite, the existing layout would remain unchanged. It has been noted that for the property to accommodate 6 occupiers as C4 usage allows, 1 number bedroom would have to cater for 2 persons. Correspondence with the applicant has confirmed that one of the bedrooms exceeding the SPD standards would be used. This could be bedroom 1, 4 or 5. It is also noted that the combined living space falls short of the SPD standard by 5 metres squared. It is noted that in previous appeals that inspectors were satisfied with an undersized communal area where some bedrooms were large, with the logic being that more space in the bedrooms would create less demand on the communal area. In this instance, bedroom 1, 4 and 5 all exceed the requirements for a double bedroom accumulating to an excess of 6 metres squared. Therefore, it is not considered that this would constitute a reason for refusal. Based on the information held by the City Council, of the 66 properties within a 50-metre radius of the application site, there were no properties identified as in lawful use as HMOs. Whilst this is the best data available to the local planning authority and is updated on a regular basis, there are occasions where properties have been included or omitted from the database in error, or have lawfully changed their use away from Class C4 HMOs without requiring the express permission of the LPA. Within objection comments received, there were a list of properties which had been brought forward as HMOs, flats, or properties which catered for disabled persons. None of these properties specified fell within the 50-metre radius of the site, therefore would not be relevant when calculating this percentage. To conclude, the percentage calculated of 1.5 would still be lower than the 10% threshold. A second strand policy introduced in 2018 in July seeks to ensure that the amenity and standard of living environment of neighbours and local occupiers is protected. Paragraph 1.22a states that an application for a HMO would be deemed to be failing to protect the amenity and provision of good living standards and environment for neighbours and local occupiers where granting the application would result in 3 or more HMOs being adjacent to one another, or granting the application would result in any residential properties C3 use being sandwiched between 2 HMOs. The proposed development would not result in 3 or more Class C4 HMOs being adjacent to one another, nor would it result in any residential property Class C3 being sandwiched between 2 HMOs. It is therefore concluded that the proposed change of use would not result in an imbalance between HMOs and Class C3 dwelling houses. Having regards to all material considerations raised, representations and planning policy, it is considered that the development is acceptable.
Thank you very much. We have 2 objectors. For various reasons, Mr. Smith is unable, who is sitting here, is unable to read his deputation, and I will read it on his behalf, and he will assent to it. Tell him if I get it wrong, please tell me. Due consideration to this matter would be very much appreciated, without a doubt, by the residents of Shadwell Road. I have resided in Shadwell Road at the above address for 40 years and have witnessed firsthand many changes over this period of time, some good and others not so good. Parking is at an all-time premium, both sides of Shadwell Road, and has been so for many years, with some residents having to park within adjacent roads south of London Road, and in some instances in London Road or north of London Road. Your kind consideration to this matter would be most kindly appreciated, not just by myself, but by all residents residing within Shadwell Road. I would like to thank you all in anticipation and very much look forward to a positive outcome to this matter, which would be gratefully received by all concerned. Yours faithfully, Eric John Smith. Correct, sir?
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. The second deputation is from Mrs. Valerie Russell. Mrs. Russell, if you could push the right-hand button. You're now live.
Thank you.
I represent 200 residents that signed a petition, plus there were many more that went online and objected to this. Two of the rooms are too small. We've got no idea where the cooking facilities are going to be it's actually 5 double bedrooms this is going to be let out, which is overcrowding, even in 2000 or 1910 standards, it would be overcrowding. We're going back to cooking on the landings and using the outside privy, as you've all stated once before. All the things that have come up in the last two come up in this one. It's not only the parking, it's the sewers, it's the extra noise and the extra rubbish. It's just loads and loads of things. It's the whole infrastructure. The property doesn't adhere to your own regulations. It doesn't adhere to fire regulations. According to the plans, there's one fire blanket, one fire extinguisher in the downstairs open plan living space, which is kitchen and living. You've got one 2-seater settee for 10 people. One full 5-ring cooker for 10 people. Okay, there are 3 en suites, but that all adds to the extra sewage. The drains have never been renewed from the day the houses were built. But it's just so much that you're allowing all these houses to be converted without any consideration for the neighbours or even the people who are going to be living in them. There's a lot going on about mental health. Try living in one room and having no community area. You can't get 10 people sitting in that community area. You can't get 10 people cooking in there. People aren't going to say, oh, it's your turn to use the loo, I'll wait an hour, when they've all got to get out to work. It's all the same as what we've just had on the last 2 properties. Councillor Hunt's comments were really good. So were Councillor Pitt's. You've just got to rethink what they've all just said to you. These houses are family homes, not doss houses. We've just got rid of 2 drug houses in Chadwell Road. We don't want another one, which is what this will probably end up as, because you don't know who's going to be living there. And 2 people per room, especially when a room is only, the smallest one is 10.22 metres, that's supposed to be for 2 adults to live there. There's also the possibility of 10 extra cars in the area, which we can't sustain. Other than that, there's not much else I can say, because it's all been said with the other 2 properties. It's just landlords trying to make more money, squashing people into houses. You've seen it on the TV, all these immigrants that come over, buy the houses, and you get a whole family in one room, £100 a space for each person. It's just money making. That is a family home, and it should be kept as one, and people shouldn't be forced to live like that. Thank you.
Members, that the actual nature of the occupants, their origins, is not a planning consideration. Mr. Norman or Mr. Park, who is going to speak? Mr. Park, you have 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk today. We really wanted to come here just to provide some clarification around our plans, because as you've just heard, there's a lot of exaggeration going on. So the first clarification is we would only look to put 5 people in this property. It does state double bedrooms, but that's simply because the professional people that we would look to have living in this house like the additional space and like to have a double bed. But as you can see from the shared living area, the house can only really support 5 people, and in fact it couldn't even support 6 unless you were to consider some additional space, so our licensing application would only be for 5. These would be professional applicants, so supporting sort of the local engineers and things that come to town, graduates, certainly not a drug den, as has been pointed out. And really that's kind of what we wanted to just say, is there's lots of stuff about parking, noise and drainage. The drainage situation is we would only be plumbing into the existing drainage. You could very easily have 5 people in a 3-bedroom family home, particularly as these are particularly large houses. So they could very easily support a family of 5, even 6 people. So we don't feel that there would be any additional burden on the drainage, nor the noise. The professional people that we would like to put in here would actually probably be quite quiet tenants. Yeah, and I think the other point we really wanted to make is that I think a lot of pressure has been put on the seller of the property by the petition that's gone round and letters that have been sent out. The rooms have been referred to as bedsits, which are very clearly not. They're very clearly listed as bedrooms. There's been a lot of talk of 10 occupants, 10 cars. We've never made any mention of that. That's a conclusion which has been jumped to because no one's taken the opportunity to come and discuss the plans with us. And it's something we would have liked to have done. Obviously, putting an HMO on the street, one of the first things we would do is go and try and talk to the neighbours and just make sure they're aware of our plans and what we would hope to do. As I've said, we aim to do this for professional sort of graduate types that are looking for their first rung, obviously not getting on the property ladder, but they come into town to work in one of the big corporations and they need somewhere to stay. And we try and make this property, or the previous properties we've done, of a very high standard in keeping what they would like to live in. So ultimately, we feel we put this planning application forward in good faith, following the rules set out by the council, and there's nothing we feel relating specifically to this property that is an issue. All the issues that have been highlighted are much more general, sort of parking, noise and things. There's nothing, for example, there are no outdoor bathrooms here, and the cooking for 5 people would take place in the kitchen where there's clearly indicated a 5-burner hob. So I don't think 56 Shadwell Road in isolation has any particular issues to be considered as an HMO. And we would also, sorry, just one final point, we also encourage tenants we put in here to cycle rather than use cars. So potentially up to 5 vehicles, but most graduates that come to town don't bring cars, as we found in previous properties. Thank you very much.
I would again remind, as I did after the last deputation, that the type of person who is a tenant is not a planning consideration. Do I have questions from members, please? Councillor Pitt.
Yes, I'll do a lot of it under comments. Can we go to standard of accommodation, please? In the paragraph directly under the list of spaces, it says the open plan living space would fall short of the expected combined living space by approximately 5 metres square. In instances where the communal area is smaller than required and the bedrooms are larger than that required, the LPA can take 1 metre square from each room over 10 metres square. Doesn't that only apply if the room is going to be solely occupied? Because otherwise it'd be a waste of time having a space standard of 11.5 metres square for 2 people to occupy it. If you were going to allow to take a metre out of it, you can't have a minimum standard and then say you can take a metre away to mitigate for communal space, because if that's the size that we're saying a bedroom should be, that's the size a bedroom should be. So in my amateur view, bedroom number 1 could have a metre allocated to communal living space, bedroom number 2 couldn't, bedroom number 3 couldn't, bedroom number 4 could, and bedroom number 5 only could if you accepted the small shortfall between 12.42 and 11.42. So to my mind, adding whatever you want to call it, allocated additional space allows for 2 or a maximum of 3 square metres to be added, not 5. Am I wrong?
I'm following the logic.
So, as a supplementary then, are we clear that the mitigation of the additional bedroom sizes in this particular issue is not relevant to the tune of 5, but only to the tune of 2, and therefore, even with the additional bedroom sizes, this does not meet our space standards?
that math is predicated on the expressed intentions by the applicant to have 3 bedrooms for single occupancy, but it falls, I mean, and this is where it's a valid judgment by members about the adequacy of the accommodation for an HMO that could be for up to 6 persons.
Councillor Smythe, then Councillor Stubbs.
My question is related to that. Why is it that we're using the required standard of 11.5 on bedroom 2 and bedroom 3 instead of the required standard of 7.5?
It may be helpful in the future if the required standards are specified as 7.5 square metres / 11.5 square metres, depending on whether it's single or double occupancy, the point already made by Councillor Pitt.
But if it is double occupancy, then we have to be worried about a licence actually being given for double use, don't we? And where this looks from this table as if the intentions are to have 2 people occupying all the rooms, and it's clearly too small for that.
And there's the express intention by the applicant for 3 of the bedrooms to be single occupancy. Again, I think that providing more details around the required standards would assist members in the future.
Sorry. If members will indulge me for a minute. Even if we take that on board, it can only be 4, not 5. Because whichever way you slice it, it can't be all of them, because one of them's definitely going to be a double to have 5 people in there. So looking at that, because 12.42 would knock it under, it's not, this is not clear. We would have to specify very specifically which bedroom was able to have double occupancy in order for that offset to be relevant. Yeah. If we don't, we can't.
Again, this was an attempt at explaining how in previous appeal decisions inspectors have accepted less than the required standard in the SPD where there is space, bedrooms that are larger than the 7.5 square metres for single occupancy, perhaps hasn't been set out as clearly as it could have done, but even if there is still a small shortfall, it's still a balanced judgment around whether that accommodation on the ground floor is adequate for up to 6 persons.
Councillor Atkins.
I feel like this is getting slightly more confused rather than clearer. This application for planning permission would only allow 6 occupants. There is no possibility under this being occupied by 10 people, is that not correct?
Occupation for 10 would be a large house of multiple occupation, and that would be assessed, would require a separate planning application, a different application for it. So it is actually for C4, which is up to potentially 6 people.
Yes.
2 questions. First to the officer. Confirm that if any of the occupants do possess a bike, the only way to the bike shed is through the house via the hallway, kitchen and out into the back garden. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. The second one is, we're arguing again over a shared space. The officers put this in different ways. Sometimes it's open communal living space, sometimes it's open shared living space, and then the following sentences, just like Councillor Pitt and Councillor on my left said, really then, how can they take into consideration that someone's bedroom is bigger than it should be, because you're not going to go up and stand in it, are you? You know, if you're one of the other residents, well, it can't be counted as communal, somebody's private bedroom. I don't know how we had this into, whoever came up with those rules. And so my final thing would be that as they don't meet the specifications, as we've already decided this afternoon, and they know what the specifications are, they've obviously been in contact with our rules and regulations. This falls short of what we are asking for. And I'm of a mind to refuse this application on those points. Thank you.
Councillor Stubbs.
Yeah, still on questions, Chairman. So the determination of the determination of HMO applications generally is quite formalistic. So, we as a committee are aware of things we cannot take into account. So we don't take into account, for an example, parking, because it's not permitted. And if we did, we would get stamped on an appeal, and we're all aware of that. And we have the 50-metre rule, and that's quite a clear-cut line as well, and the space standards is quite clear cut. So I'm quite intrigued in this particular application where we have this thing about subtracting 1 metre squared. Now, I've seen quite a number of HMO reports, I'm sure other committee members have, and I've not seen that specified in that way before. And I mean, there's been it's been sort of implied, as we discussed on some of the earlier applications, that inspectors have accepted an argument that you cannot meet the space standards for the communal area if you're over on the living room, but we've never, over on the bedrooms, we've never had it laid out in a formula before. Is there any particular policy basis behind this? Because, I mean, I'm concerned that that might be a reasonable thing to do. I mean, that might very well be a perfectly reasonable policy to have, but it should be as a policy rather than something which is applied in the case of a particular application. It should be a general policy across the board or not.
The formula of 1 square metres, I understand, fell out of an appeal decision, but I'm not entirely sure of the address or anything, so I'm sorry, but that's where the idea of trying to equate a shortfall to the over-provision fell out of.
A comment almost out of that, which is when the SPD is updated as part of the local plan, I think whatever this council's policy is should be made completely explicit so we know what's on which side of the line.
Certainly, I think that is a very good point, Councillor Stubbs, and I will ask the officers concerned to take that on board. Councillor Atkins.
So far, with this one, we've been talking just about mainly about the communal area. They're being put forward as double bedrooms, which means two of the bedrooms, bedroom 2 and bedroom 3, actually falls short. One by about 0.8 of a metre, one by more than a metre of the required standard. That surely is a factor that also has to be taken into account as they're put forward as double bedrooms, or should we consider that less significant because they potentially could have been put forward as single bedrooms and therefore been valid?
Back to the answer that I gave a little earlier, that I think it would be helpful to members if it's referenced 7.5 square metres and 11.5, but it should have been referenced as single occupancy, and it is in excess of the requirement rather than the double that it's, some of them there's a small shortfall on, yeah.
In coming to comments, I would remind members in this that C4 use does only allow a maximum of 6 occupants, and there are 5 bedrooms, 2 of which we have been concerned about, and the open plan living space. So can I have comments from members, please? Councillor Hunt, then followed by Councillor Norton.
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint anybody, but I've listened to everyone. There's clear concern across the committee today. One of the reasons it's here, we've heard the officers, that when something falls short of the city council's, the local planning authorities' standards, is going to come to the committee. I'm grateful for that, Mr. Manley. So in this case, we've got 2 rooms which don't meet the requirements, on a communal area which don't meet requirements. So for those reasons, I'm going to agree with Councillor Jonas, and second is a proposal to refuse on those grounds which have been touched upon at the other end of the table as well by Matt. Look, the other thing I want to talk about too is more practicalities and living in places. I mean, I got a mate, I was around his house the other day, we were watching a movie, and and we were at the front lounge, the house has been configured well, and we were at the front lounge and we were watching a movie. We were not loud, we'd had a couple of drinks, we weren't being noisy, but the guy in the back room upstairs, at the top stairs, way at the other side, came down, was absolutely furious because he could hear the TV. And you've got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So these are the practicalities you've got to deal with when people are living, separate lives and independently. It's a bit different when you're your family. We've got bedroom 5 here, fellas, which has got the headboard sat right up against the sofa so you've got people coming back from having a good night out, presumably, even professional people do that, I know. You got a curry and a few beers and you're sat in that community, probably going to be a television on. The person in bedroom 5 is going to get completely and utterly hacked off, I would have thought. So, you have to think about all these things. It's not a planning consideration, I know, but when it comes to me, I want to see how these things are. It's a nice layout, there's no doubt. It's the best one to date, clearly, but it doesn't meet the standards, and I'm sure you guys will go away and do something better with this. It's too much in one house, that's quite clear. We've also heard about the cycles getting through. It is too much, and for that reason I'm going to support Councillor Jonas, and I shall second his refusal. I think I've made myself clear, my reasoning, and I think we've all picked up on that this afternoon.
Thank you. Yeah, this is an area that we've spoken to lots of residents in over the time, and I think it's fair to say that normally when you speak to residents, the number one concern is about parking, but actually in Shadwell and the surrounding roads, lots of concerns come from HMOs, or what they perceive to be HMOs, and you have a look over forecourts and there are still some forecourts within these areas that seem to have an excessive amount of rubbish, suggesting that they may be HMOs even if they're not registered. So it is a concern for residents there. We can't use the potential drug use in some of these houses, or the backgrounds of potential tenants as a consideration. And also, on the other hand side to this, I don't doubt that the developers would probably make this into a very nice looking and a good HMO. I don't doubt their intentions at all. But on that, outside of that, I do shadow all of the concerns that the committee have. Mainly about the required standards here. Again, I feel very uncomfortable supporting an application when we've refused applications on not making required space standards. So it's been proposed, it's been seconded. I would have done that if it wasn't for my two colleagues here, but I'm inclined to vote for refusal on this.
Councillor Udi. Sorry, okay.
It's all right, I don't mind her calling me Pitt, that's fine.
Councillor Pitt.
It's all right. But she feels bad now. Representations in the report on page 20. I think when members of the public have taken their time to come along to the committee, we should, and we've kind of gone around most of them, but I think it's only fair that we go through the list, just so that you're aware of what we are and are not allowed to consider legally in these terms. So we have too many HMOs in Shadwell roads and surrounding roads. The evidence that's available to the council doesn't support that objection, but I think we should add in, and I've said it God knows how many times in this committee, the evidence that we have of HMOs in the north of the city is woefully poor, and we need to get that sorted out. Lack of parking provisions won't stand up because they don't consider HMOs any differently to a family home. We are not allowed to consider the behaviour of future residents. That's considered by other enforcement issues. Similarly, nor can we look at air quality for that reason, or sewage and drainage, or increases in the litter and waste. I've got a lot of HMOs in my ward in Central Southsea. Some of them are absolutely immaculate and spotless. Others are in a very poor state. But there are enforcement measures available, and I would hope that your ward councillors would support you in following those enforcement measures where you have dirty forecourts, because we're very active in our area, and I would expect your ward councillors to give you the same level of service. The level of noise is again something that's dealt with elsewhere, and the size of the bedrooms is actually in line with the policy, but it could only be occupied by a maximum of 6 people, and the applicants indicated 5. So because they were the concerns that you brought up, I thought, and we've done it many times on this committee, it's not about going over what we know, it's about making sure that you're aware of the situation. So on the application itself, I agree it is the best one we've seen today in terms of what's actually on offer, because this is somebody who's actually brought forward a proposal to turn a house into a house to be shared by adults. What we don't see and didn't see in the previous applications was that effort being made. So we can clearly see how people would live in this space. But the flip side of that is that what we see south of Fratton Bridge on a very regular basis is the use of permitted development works to their well beyond the spirit of what they're intended to be on a very regular basis. Here we've got the opposite. We have an opportunity for the applicant to have used their permitted development rights in order to make sure that the open plan living space that was available met the council's required standard. It's clearly not restricted. The plan of the garden shows that there's plenty of space there to extend that, and it shouldn't be the job of this committee to excuse people of their obligations in the policy that's laid down. I think that the mitigation of the other room sizes is slightly questionable on this one, and for that reason I can't support it, and that's a real disappointment.
Councillor Udy, then Councillor Smythe.
I'd just like to thank you, Mrs. Russell, for getting a petition together. It's a lot for me. It's very nice to see community organisation, and Councillor Pitt has addressed the points over it. I just want to bring up for the applicants is that if you had left this at 4 bedrooms and increased the open plan living room, this would have flown through, absolutely, without a doubt. Because there's no reason for us to refuse it at all, is there, at that point, if there was one less bedroom? I think maybe just a reorganisation. I'm like Councillor Pitt says, we're happy to have professional people living in a house. It would have been spacious, there would have been a lot of room for everyone, as I said, spacious. Like you have ensuite facilities. Normally when we have landlords come here, or people that have developed HMOs or even bigger HMOs, especially in the north of the city, we've normally been showing photos of what has happened to the house, and then putting forward in the professional quality that they feel, that they put on their own properties, and it's been really helpful, and we haven't seen that today. But just for the fact that the communal living space is 25% smaller than it's supposed to be, is that we cannot allow that at all, and it is a shame, and I'm sorry.
So, thank you. This is a small comment, but I think bedroom 5 not only suffers from the only place you can put a bedhead being exactly where people are going to be watching television, as Councillor Hunt said, but also there's been no trouble taken at all to get rid of the door in the bedroom. I think ground floor doors in a bedroom are pretty scary for most people, and that significantly reduces the capacity of that sleeping space. I know it measures up, but it's that pinch point in the middle makes it almost impossible to put furniture in. So I think that's another thing that makes me not like this very much.
Councillor Atkins.
Yeah, I do want to speak up slightly in support of the developers and also be honest with residents about what the likely results of this are going to be. This is obviously a high standard HMO, I would say, from the number of en-suites you're putting in, and from the size of the bedrooms, size of most of the bedrooms at least, from a double bed perspective, and if they were single bedrooms, bedroom 2 and 3, the size of those bedrooms would also be quite generous. I actually live in a house quite similar to this at the moment, have done because I'm a house hunting. And so, you know, there are perfectly reasonable people who want to live in these things, but there are residents' concerns that HMOs obviously create that we can't consider. Actually, in my house on Stubbington Avenue, it does contribute to the parking problem, and it is likely that more cars will turn up than 2. But that is not something we can consider in this planning committee, because at national level we've been told we can't. And with a very small number of modifications, this is going to go through without potentially even coming before committee, because it'll simply meet all of the standards, and if we were to turn it down, it'll be approved on appeal. So you could either turn bedroom 2 and 3 into a single bedroom and make more communal space out of bedroom 5, or in the one that I live in, a conservatory on the end of the open plan living space, taking it over the limit. That's going to put it within all of the rules. So I think this is going to be an HMO, and I want to be honest with residents that I think actually there's not going to be much this planning committee is going to be able to do eventually to stop this being an HMO. I'm not going to propose the report today. I'll abstain on it. I think the writing's probably on the wall for the application today, because this falls short of required communal living area. It's going to be occupied by 5 people, and the amount of space available for 5 people in it, in the communal area, doesn't meet our standards, and today we are wanting to enforce our standards strictly, but in time it's highly likely this is going to become an HMO because of the ability to quite easily meet the rules, and the standard actually is quite high, and I think the tenants that you will get living here when it eventually happens will be people who will be relatively quiet, relatively professional, non-disruptive in their personal life. I think you probably do have the potential to get parking issues, but unfortunately that's not something we can consider.
Councillor Norton, then a comment from the chair, and then we will move to the vote.
Yeah, I just wanted to share Councillor Udi's thanks, you beat me to it there, in thanking the residents for engaging in their community, really. It's not easy to set up a petition, but it really is helpful when we get comments and residents' views on things like this, so thank you.
So, no, unless you, Councillor Udi, you would like to ask the lady a question.
Would you like to ask a question, or
Yeah, Jason said that we didn't contact him. We didn't know who he was or where to contact him, apart from going and knocking on his front door in the ridings. You could have come to the neighbours. My name and address has been in the paper. You could have just knocked on the bloke who lives next door.
We went and saw Susanna last week and we couldn't find him. We tried to contact all of you.
Well, no one's been...
Okay, if we can now come back to the issue in hand. There has been a proposal for refusal that has been proposed on the grounds that the additional area provided in bedrooms is inadequate to mitigate for the open plan living space being below our standards, and therefore that we refuse this on those grounds. Yes, Councillor Hunt.
Sorry, can I just be very clear then, and maybe the officer could advise us, because we also saw that the bedroom spaces themselves are not big enough, according to what has been submitted today and we're looking at today, because I did talk about including that in the refusal.
That is the point which I made, that the small size of the open plan living space is not mitigated by.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Well, yeah, and I accept what Matt says at the end.
Members, we have a proposal for refusal. Can I see those who are in favour of refusal of this application? Please show. Can I say those against? Those who are abstaining. The application is refused on the grounds which have been stated. Thank you very much. Thank you for your deputations.
Chair, Hugh. Apologies, but I've got to go because I've got a planning discussion on another matter entirely that I've got to go and join a conference call for.
I believe, Councillor Jonas, you also have to leave at this point, is that correct? Oh, you've got a meeting which has been cancelled. I would remind the members who are leaving of the planning session tomorrow morning, 9:15.
Chair, could I just say, I'm extremely sorry not to be able to come, but it's well known that I can't be in Portsmouth
Yes,
for meetings
I know.
on Thursday, and I'm really sorry, and I'd like an alternative opportunity to learn what you're learning.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Okay. May I have Mr. Matthew pick up to the table, please?
Chairman, can I also ask just for advice when the solicitor returns? I note what it says in the report about why it's at the committee. Do the Conservative members need to make any form of declaration?
Right. Do the Conservative members need to make any form of declaration at this point?
Why? Oh, due to Councillor Jones's position? No. Councillor Jones has a pecuniary interest of her own, as I understand it, as a non-executive director. That doesn't affect you.
Councillor Udi.
What about when Boris held up the Portsmouth City Football Club T-shirt the other week?
That may be fine, but I don't think that constitutes a reason that you should not sit.
Mr. Johnson,
you can't
is not
escape
on the
that way. Can I have the officer's report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. The application relates to the south stand there and there of Fratton Park, which lies north of Carisbrook Road. The south stand currently comprises a two-tier terrace of seating, walkways and stairs leading to ground level. Directly south of the site is a row of terrace houses that form Carisbrook Road. The gardens of these properties are situated on the boundary edge. Further south of the site exist rows of terrace houses leading to the matchday entrances of the ground. The site is located within Fratton Park and south side of Rodney Road as identified by policy PCS 7 of Portsmouth Plan. Towards the north of the site is the North Stand and the football club's car park, and further north of the wider football club is a light industrial site with various commercial uses. Beyond the eastern boundary of the wider football site is residential development, and beyond the western boundary is a Tesco store. Built in 1925, the south stand replaced the previous grandstand and for years was the only sheltered stand to the ground. The existing TV gantry was a much later addition to the stand. The design of the existing TV gantry has long since been superseded by the broadcasting requirements of today. The application seeks planning permission for both a replacement and enlargement of the existing TV gantry located within the north-facing roof plane of the south stand, together with the installation of 8 new floodlight columns, which would be evenly spaced for each side of the TV gantry. Additional floodlighting would also be provided on both the frame of the proposed gantry and the underside of the eaves of the existing south stand. The replacement TV gantry is required in order for the club to provide television broadcasters with modern-day, fit-for-purpose accommodation for their camera crews and match commentators. The new gantry would also accommodate the club's public address facilities. The proposed floodlighting would form part of a new comprehensive system that would eventually replace the ground's existing floodlight columns and enable the club to provide improved pitch lighting that would meet the standards of both the VAR and the UEFA football associations. The application proposal is considered therefore to be compliant with policy PCS 7 as it would result in the improvement of the existing stadium with enhanced facilities.
The proposed TV gantry has been designed in a manner which is considered to respect and reflect the character and appearance of the existing stand that was designed by the early 20th century football architect Archibald Leach. Similarly, the proposed floodlights are of a modest size and would appear proportionate to the size and scale of the south stand's roof. And you can see the 4 column floodlights on either side of the TV gantry. Due to the nature of the surrounding area, it is not considered that the development would be intrusive or out of keeping. Having regard to the above information, it is considered that the proposed television camera gantry and floodlighting to South Stand would be acceptable in design and character terms and would accord with the principles of the MPPF and policy PCS 23 of the Portsmouth Plan. Fratton Park currently has 4 floodlight columns which vary in height from between 34 metres and 36 metres, which are located within each corner of the ground. 2 of the floodlight columns have already been decommissioned, with their lighting having been replaced by new floodlighting to the roofs of the Fratton End and North Stand. The remaining 2 floodlight columns are to be decommissioned at the end of this season. The Environmental Health Team have reviewed the relevant documents and the submitted lighting scheme and recommend that a condition is applied to ensure the lights are switched off after 2300 hours. However, it is noted that the football club has hosted floodlit games at Fratton Park since 1963, where light has been emitted from the light clusters at the top of the 4 corner towers, which had a height of between 34 and 36 metres. The light spill from the original floodlight towers was far greater than from the currently proposed, much improved lighting scheme. It is noted that the LPA did not impose conditions on earlier applications for replacement floodlight towers, restricting their hours of use. Furthermore, no objections were received from local residents in relation to the proposal. Therefore, with regards to the above, it is not considered necessary or reasonable to impose a condition restricting hours of lighting. With regards to residential amenity, it's considered that the development would have little, if any, impact on local residents' enjoyments of their homes. The proposed lighting would be highly effective in providing a level of light on the pitch that would meet the standards of both VAR and UEFA. Additionally, the height above ground level of proposed floodlighting would be approximately 16 metres to 18 metres lower than the lighting provided by the original 4 floodlight columns. As such, the light spill from the ground floodlighting system would be significantly reduced and mostly contained within the immediate stadium interior. It is therefore considered that the proposed floodlighting would not significantly affect nearby residential amenity in terms of light spill. Again, given the nature and location of the proposed television camera gantry, it's not considered that this element of the proposal would unduly impact upon residential amenity in terms of loss of privacy, outlook or light. The Local Highways Authority raised no objection to the proposal subject to the lighting being fitted with a shield to prevent direct illumination on the public highway and causing driver distraction. As you can see, the lights are to be positioned along the roof of the south stand with supplementary lighting fixed to the underside of the eaves, providing an evenly lit pitch. The lights are to be set at a height lower than the south stand ridge to avoid light spill. In addition, it's noted the lights be fitted with a shield to the upper section and sides, and the lighting would be directed downward towards the pitch. It's therefore not considered the flood lighting would impact upon highway safety. So to conclude, the proposal would preserve the character and appearance of the football stadium and surrounding area. It would be proportionate to and in keeping with its purpose and function. It would not result in an unacceptable harm to residential amenities of the adjoining neighbours or the highway. The development would therefore comply with the objectives of the MPPF and the requirements of the Portsmouth Plan, and it's therefore recommended for conditional permission. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pickup.
Thank you, Chairman. After your officer's very thorough presentation, I have nothing further to add, but would be happy to answer any questions should there be any from members.
Thank you for that very comprehensive deputation, Mr. Pickup. Members, questions? Councillor Hunt? No? All right. Members, comments? Councillor Hunt, followed by Councillor Norton.
Of course. No, you go ahead. You go first today.
Okay. Again, I would like to, this is obvious, isn't it? I would like to propose this. I think it's really important that, this development keeps in keeping with the city's heritage and its kind of confidence around its football club. It's a really big part of it. I like that it's in keeping with the area, and we need to do all we can to make sure that the facilities are, up to standard. It's basic, really. It's a no-brainer for me.
Councillor Hunt?
Yeah, I'm really pleased for the club and for all the people who enjoy sport in our city. This is a great sporting city. We have very good sporting facilities, and see the club to have recovered so quickly, thanks to its supporters and its members, to get to this stage. And we see all this progression with the buildings and with the team, gradually building a very strong team. So the ambition is there enormously, obviously. So it looks good. It looks all right, doesn't it? It's not upsetting anybody. It fits in. It's more progress for the sporting economy of the city, which is good news. So yes, I'm very happy to second it.
Thank you. Councillor Pickup. Councillor Atkins.
I'd like to say that I'm very happy to support this application. I can't see any reason to refuse it, Tal. So just wanted to say that it's pleasing to hear that Portsmouth Football Stadium will now be VAR capable, so that controversial decisions can be properly adjudicated on in the future. Thank you.
Yes, I suppose the only comment from the chair is I'm pleased to see that the Portsmouth Football Club is actually catching up with Millwall. But that's another story. Any further comments? Proposed by Councillor Norton, seconded by Councillor Hunt. All those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move to item on the agenda concerning another matter, which is the appeal against non-determination at 14 Wisborough Road. I would remind members that we would have to go into closed session were anybody to make reference to the legal advice which you have there. If we can avoid making direct reference to that legal advice, I think we can keep it in open session. So, can you introduce this for us, please, Mr. Manley?
You'll see the officers he's actually doing some photocopying at the moment. And here he is. This application, as you may recall, was brought before committee previously with a recommendation of approval, and there was a vote on the day to defer it because there was some queries and questions regarding the the recommendation and the appeal decision. Subsequent to that deferral, the application has now gone to an appeal. And so what we've got to do is we've brought the application back in front of you for members to consider the application again and actually provide us as officers with what would have been your recommendation should you be in a position to actually determine the application, so that we can then pass that on to the planning inspectorate as what the council's view would be, because obviously we can't do it from an officer's perspective because it was in front of you to determine. You have the orange papers in front of you, and as we said, that's giving you advice on some of the questions that were being raised at the previous committee. Obviously, if you do wish to discuss that, we'll have to go into closed session to do that. So what we're going to do is, obviously it's on this part of the agenda. Matthew will do a presentation just to remind you of that, and obviously you need to take into consideration the advice received within the orange papers. One difference that you will see is that actually, as part of the recommendation, the previous recommendation was a recommendation for an approval. This is actually now coming forward with a recommendation of refusal, because between the application being viewed at the previous committee and now, the issue of nitrates has arisen. Obviously there's no mitigation associated with that at this moment in time, so you'll see the officer's recommendation is recommended accordingly with a change from the previous recommendation to what it is at the moment. So I'll pass you over to the officer to give his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sim. Good afternoon. Members may remember that this item was last at the April committee. There was deferred, and it's the subject of an appeal, as mentioned by Sim. So, for the benefit of members, the application relates to a mid-terrace property that is located on the northern side of Whisperer Road. The planning permission is sought for the change of use from Class C3/C4 to a 7-bedroom HMO, which is classed as sui generis. Internally, the property features 2 bedrooms, 1 shower room and a communal living space at ground floor level, 3 bedrooms and a shower room at first floor level, and 2 bedrooms and a shower room at second floor level. Above, you can see some photos that were taken back of the site, of the property at the last site visit. So there you have the shared kitchen communal area, the rear garden and the rear elevation of the property. And there you see the upstairs, the first floor, second floor rear bedroom and the first floor bedroom. So, having regard to the SPD guidelines, it is noted that the combined living area has an under provision of 2 metres squared. While this is contrary to the guidelines, an inspector has previously concluded on the application that the development does provide an adequate standard of accommodation for all occupiers. So following further research from the deferred committee, the officer's view has changed from a recommendation for permission to one of refusal. This is not due to any of the previously raised matters and is instead due to the updated advice from Natural England around the levels of nitrate discharge into the Solent. As such, the reason for refusal now states, in the absence of a suitable agreement to secure appropriate mitigation measures for the increased discharge of nitrogen and phosphorus into the Solent, the development would be likely to have a significant effect on the Solent special protection areas and is therefore contrary to the NPPF, policy PCS 13 of the Portsmouth Plan, and the conservation of habitats and special regulations as amended. Thank you.
Members, questions? Councillor Atkins.
Essentially, you're saying that there, given the inspector's decision, there don't seem to appear to be any planning reasons why we should refute this application apart from the nitrates issue.
That would be my view, yes, that'd be correct.
Councillor Hunt, question?
No.
Right. Comments? Right, Councillor Hunt, then Councillor Atkins.
Yes, sure. Well, our hands are, and I'm sure everybody can say this, our hands are tied in this matter, clearly. And I shall have to wait and see what everybody else says, but clearly our hands are tied. That's what I can say.
Councillor Atkins.
More of a question, actually.
Okay.
Can we give permission to this application if we are so minded?
We could. There is no reason why we could not. However, we would have problems with Natural England because we could not deal with the nitrogen issue.
I meant to say we're actually being asked to give you advice on how to respond to an appeal.
Right, sorry, your question is, are we basically empowered to do anything with this application? No, the planning inspectorate has the power to determine the application. However, as part of the process that the planning inspectorate will go through, they'd like to know what we might have done with it, or would have done with it.
So we could say you might be given a permission?
Well, you could, but the inspectorate's still going to be looking for justification as to why you've done that. That's where you need to still be, directing yourselves as if you were hypothetically determining it today, but of course you're not.
Sorry, Councillor.
Well, I remember this application quite well when it came up before, and my position at the time, given all of the constraints on the committee, was to propose what was then the officer's report. So I proposed at the time that we granted their permission. We've got an amended recommendation in the light of policy changes and so forth, and which is broadly the same actually. So I will propose the recommendation.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Smythe. Any further comments from members? Councillor Udi, then Councillor Atkins.
Just to bring up, I was on this too. Remember that we were all gobsmacked when we all saw the Councillor Hunt did it then when he saw the front of the house. He went, "What?" Because it was tiny, and we deferred it because we had a couple of questions to ask about why it had been over the appeal and how it wouldn't affect local amenity, and we thought that we still kind of, well, I certainly thought that it did still impact local amenity. But I'm willing to bend the knee at the officer's recommendations of refusal on the basis of the nitrates issue right now, because otherwise I feel like I might get shouted at by other people and sort of anything. But so please, but I'm still bitterly disappointed with the state of that student house. It's unreal. It's making me upset again. Cheers.
Councillor Atkins.
I'm not sure if there's anything on the basis of which I can propose on the basis of it, but were this to be decided before me, I would be proposing to grant planning permission on the basis that I am not of the opinion that a development of this nature is likely to discharge nitrate or phosphorus or contribute to eutrophication in the soil protected area, as I believe that the sources of such eutrophication are clearly from farming and not from residential development.
Whilst I think we are all aware that the nitrate problem is not a problem which is caused in any great extent by this city, the situation following legal challenge is that we are required to ensure that our developments are nitrate neutral. We are being blamed for other people's misdemeanours, especially people with nice large gardens in the leafy suburbs of Fareham and of Gospel and of Havant. But we are where we are.
With respect, I don't agree that is the legal position. There is one of our statutory consultees has reached a particular ruling on the subject, but I think the ruling is erroneous when you take the special circumstances of Portsmouth City itself into account, and I think that the legal precedent in question is not sufficiently clear, as it's not been decided in the case of Portsmouth as yet, that Portsmouth is contributing to nitrate and eutrophication in the Solent.
Can I have Kevin on that? Yes.
Right. I touched earlier upon the fact that to depart from Natural England's view as a statutory consultee, the Council would be held to a test of cogent, compelling reasons for departing from that view. It's not to say that's impossible, but I would be concerned about whether we have any scientific evidence to remove beyond all scientific doubt, is then the second test, as to whether we could defend that position. Did I understand it yours was a comment and not a proposal?
Comment was that were this an application before me, I would be proposing permission.
We have before us a proposal for refusal on the grounds that of nitrogen mitigation. Right?
Do you have a second? Is that a proposal?
It was proposed.
So, to be clear, you're proposing to refuse the application, effectively to reject the officer's recommendation?
I thought Councillor Norton was proposing that.
Apologies. Apologies.
Sorry, Councillor Stubbs.
I propose to refuse the application in line with the recommendation on the order paper.
And I think that was seconded by Councillor Smythe. Am I correct? Yeah. So can I have those in favour of the recommendation to refuse on the grounds which you find on page 3 of your papers? Those in favour of refusal, please show. Those against refusal, please show. Those abstaining, please show.
I wasn't on the original committee. I don't have the history of it.
Right. It is refused.
For clarity, would have been refused, but yes.
The position which we can go to the planning inspectorate with is, had this come to the committee would have refused it on the grounds, in the absence of a suitable agreement to secure appropriate mitigation measures for the increased discharge of nitrogen and phosphorus into the Solent, and so on. That concludes the applications before us. We now move... to suggest to the press, thank you for your attendance.